Oh, I'm gonna have to edit that out. Hello, Topical, and welcome back to your NBA coverage, where, you know what, we're gonna do something different tonight. And this time, Aradh and I are gonna talk about the video that we just watched. So behind the scenes, usually how I start these podcasts is I start off with either some music or, well, always some music. But this time I did a highlight compilation because I figured we always talk about the NBA. Maybe we should do something NBA themed this time instead of something anime themed, which is very unrelated from the NBA, obviously. So what we watched before we started this recording for like the past 3 minutes was a compilation of the quote unquote unbelievable NBA top 10 long distance shots HD. So, something really interesting from this video is it has a lot of just completely unknown players or busts or just people you may never have even heard of. And then it obviously finishes off with some better known players. So, Rod, what's your first impressions of that video?
It was pretty interesting. Obviously we see shots like that. I guess I wouldn't say regularly, but you see it from time to time. You see players like J.R. Smith. You see, obviously LeBron's done it before, but it was cool to see, because like you said, most of those players, I think up until it got to, I think either LeBron James or Chris Bosh, I really didn't recognize many of those players, like Maggette something. I didn't even know.
Yeah, Corey Maggette.
Yeah, I've never even heard of him before. I did recognize some of the teams though, because they had the We Believe Warriors on there. Someone from their team making a shot. They had the old Raptors, with Chris Bosh. So I was able to, and Rajon Rondo, so we know him. But it's cool to see a compilation like that put together. It's not something that I've ever even really considered looking at because, for me personally, when I think of long distance shots like that, the two that immediately come to mind for me are Steph Curry, obviously, versus the Thunder in that regular season game. That he shot from just above half court. Now it's not as far as the ones that we were just watching, because the ones we were watching were from like 65 feet. Like in the backcourt, and just at the end of the shot, at the end of the quarter, just throwing it up there. But Steph Curry's is memorable to me because even though he wasn't behind half court, that was for a critical. That was to take the lead in a tight game. And then also with Kyle Lowry did it once. He heaved from behind the half court line when they were down. It was against the Heat 2 years ago in a playoff game, and they were down 87-90. And then he hurled a shot from behind half court to tie the game and send it to overtime. So those are the two that stick out to me. But it was cool to see such long distance shots like that. Obviously, if you were to do a newer one, there'd be some new inclusions because I think Andre Drummond, I believe, he threw one, I think, from 80 feet. Then there was Taj Gibson threw one like a football from like 67 feet, and then J.R. Smith recently in one of these playoff games, I believe, also flung one from about 65 feet. So newer one, if they decide to do an update, that would be cool to see the differences because I feel like there probably being some more well-known players. I think since just in general, I think more people are familiar with certain role players in the NBA now than they were back then. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and we definitely wouldn't see players like Adam Morrison have a highlight on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the two that I can really think of that would definitely be on a more modern one, even if this play specifically isn't modern, is Baron Davis's shot from 95 feet out, where he was literally standing on the upper baseline, because that's the longest shot in NBA history. I was surprised it wasn't on there. And then also Jay Crowder just shooting it and scoring from an inbounds pass, where like it was coming from after a basket. Obviously, it didn't count because he wasn't on the court, but literally he did that, and like the announcers were all confused because they wanted it to count. But that's what you get from Boston.
Yeah, I was also this is sort of a similar thing. It's not long distance necessarily, but I remember I think this play was actually a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if it was in a playoff game, but the Rockets, Trevor Ariza, he actually shot a corner three, like while he was inbounding the ball, and he made it. But it didn't count. But the announcers were confused because they were like, "Wait a minute, like, are you allowed to do that? Like, can you shoot the ball from an inbound position?" So it was just funny to see that they didn't know that you can't do that. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay, well, after that interlude, I guess I should introduce the podcast. So this is Topical, obviously, Rationalizing the Monkey Brain. and you are listening to it on iTunes, your podcast player, or YouTube. So, they give you a lot of features where you can rate us, review us, give us comments. So, do all of them, frankly. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, give us likes, give us dislikes, whatever. I don't really care. I just like seeing big numbers. On iTunes, do whatever you want. And you know what? On our podcast players like Stitcher, I know Overcast is a big one. You can touch those. You can't really do much on them. You can rate them, you can review them, you can recommend them to other people. Actually, that's a great thing. I never tell you guys to do that. Just recommend it to your friends. Your friends probably need something to listen to when they're driving. They're kind of sick of listening to the top 100 on the radio or whatever. Just recommend they listen to podcasts in general. And then if you get them into that, recommend this podcast. All right, let's get going. So, obviously, we're going to recap the conference finals because those ended. Last we checked on them, I believe it was 2-1 in the East, Celtics over the Cavs, and it was 2-1 Rockets over the Warriors. So, a lot changed since. Oh, wait, no, it was 2-1 Warriors over the Rockets, my bad. So, obviously, a lot has changed since then. So, okay. I guess we should just give the spoiler now. So if you guys haven't seen the conference finals yet, or you're like me and wait like 2 weeks to actually make up the NBA coverage, didn't do that this year because obviously it wouldn't make any sense. I'm talking about it right now. But if you don't want to hear who's going to the NBA finals, stop now. All right, so the Warriors, and unsurprisingly, they won the Western Conference Finals, and the Cavs won the Eastern Conference Finals. So we're going to have Warriors Cavaliers 4. So, I guess we should start with the Western Conference Finals because we always end with LeBron. So, what did you think in games 4 through 7, and what were your big impressions out of that? And just a heads up for you, I actually watched Game 6, so we can talk about that one in particular if you want to.
So, I mean, I was enjoying it a lot in games 4 and 5. Stopped enjoying it as much in game 6 and 7, obviously because I was pulling for Houston. But, the series was very interesting to see how the dynamic shifted once, obviously first Andre Iguodala went down and then second when Chris Paul went down. So going into game 4, like I said, I wasn't 100% confident that, Houston would be able to win a game in Golden State. I thought that they would probably drop down to 3-1, go home, win game 5, and then lose back in Oakland in game 6. However, I was wrong, and I was very glad that I was wrong because Houston actually did manage to win Game 4. It was a really good game. It was defensive. It was a defensive-oriented game, just like Game 3 was, which I really enjoyed. And in Game 4, I gained a lot of faith in Houston because I realized, now all they have to do is win 2 games at home, and that really shouldn't be that difficult, considering Kevin Durant has essentially disappeared throughout the fourth quarters. And Steph Curry has not played well in the fourth quarters either. And that became, extremely apparent in Game 3, or in Game 4. Because I think Game 4 was the game that Steph Curry missed a wide open 3 to tie the game after he went for, I think, 5 of 7 in the third quarter from 3. So it was good that Houston was able to win defensively because, in my mind at least, I was thinking that, okay, even if their shots aren't falling, since they've won these past 2 games with defense, even if their shots, if they don't turn up and start falling in games, 5, 6, and 7, then, Houston still has a really good chance of winning because they're playing. They in my eyes, they essentially figured out how to defend the Warriors, which is obviously extremely difficult because you have, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. But particularly in the fourth quarter, I think they really sort of exploited the weakness that Golden State has, which in my opinion is sort of not deciding how you're going to approach the fourth quarter. Are you going to approach the fourth quarter through Durant isolation because he's probably the best individual, isolation player, just because he can shoot over people? I'm not saying he's the most skilled because, most skilled isolation player, you can go James Harden or Kyrie Irving but in terms of most effective isolation player, I give that to Kevin Durant just because he's 7 feet tall. He can dribble like a guard, can shoot over anybody like he's shooting over a chair. So I think that the Warriors get a little bit confused as to whether or not they want to, keep doing their fluid ball movement thing where they let Steph Curry run loose and Klay Thompson run loose off screens, and then, they hit them for open threes. And so it's kind of either they have the choice of either going through that style where you run your offense through Steph Curry, or, you do Durant isolation and wait for other people to get open and hope for some passing out of that, which is, when they play through Durant. So I think the Rockets did a good job exploiting the fact that they weren't sure about which one to do, because in my eyes they were defending the 3-point line very well in Game 4, and they were defending Kevin Durant very well. It was very strange to see him struggle. He had, I think, I'm not sure if this was in Game 4 or Game 5, but in one of the games he had 0 field goals and 0 assists in the fourth quarter. And overall, for the games 1 through 6, he had actually a horrendous series in the fourth quarter. I think he only ended up scoring, maybe 6 or 7 points through games 1 through 6 in the fourth quarter. And in the nights, I think he went 1 of 3 one night, then he went 0 of something 2 nights, and then maybe 1 of something else another night. So he really didn't have a great series in the fourth quarter, which is very interesting to see how he wasn't rated as much on social media as I thought he should be, because, in all fairness, if some people are going to say that you're better than LeBron, then you deserve to be killed just like LeBron. But, obviously that's not the case. So it was really good to see how the Rockets were able to win Game 4. And then even more impressively, how they were able to do it again in Game 5. Game 5 was magnificent. Chris Paul took over in the second half. He played tremendously. And the most, I guess not surprising, but pleasant thing that I saw in Game 5 was how well Chris Paul was able to defend Kevin Durant, because logistically, it really just doesn't make any sense for Kevin Durant to struggle against Chris Paul, because Chris Paul is barely 6 feet tall, and Kevin Durant is maybe 6'11", just about to be 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
So it's weird to see how he was being defended, and I'm not going to say shut down, but how he was becoming hesitant to shoot it almost. He wasn't attacking Chris Paul, and which is very strange to me, because in my eyes it's all you have to do is catch, turn, and shoot over him because he's 6 feet tall. But I guess it goes to show Chris Paul is very strong. He stands you up almost to the point where you cannot get comfortable, and you can't hit him in the face with your elbow, and then you might get called for an offensive foul or something. So he did a great job defending Kevin Durant, which was splendid to see, because I thought that if you're making it such that Kevin Durant can't score on you in the fourth quarter, and they have to play only through Steph, Clay, and Draymond when they're not when they haven't been playing that way the whole game, then it's going to be weird. Because I think Houston, like I said earlier, I think they did this thing to Golden State where Golden State kind of doesn't really they play fine, they play well enough to still be in the game in the first half. They don't play with a purpose in the first half, and then in the third quarter, what they do is they go to their whole Steph running around and shooting threes from everywhere thing. But then in the fourth, they turn to Durant isolation. So, like I said, I think the Rockets exploited that in games 4 and 5. But then what I realized, as Chris Paul was on the ground at the end of Game 5 holding his hamstring, I really didn't think that it didn't look that bad, and it didn't look like he was in a tremendous amount of pain. So, I thought he might miss, or I thought he might maybe come off the bench or be listed as questionable, but he was almost immediately declared out for Game 6, which is obviously when I started to worry, because I was like, okay, yeah, maybe they can run a similar defense without Chris Paul, but their offense isn't going to be the same thing. It's going to be just like 2017 when it's hard and generating for everyone, which we saw does not work against better teams in the playoffs, because he pulled his magic disappearing act against the Spurs last year.
Yeah.
So that was alarming to me. But then, so Game 6 was obviously horrendous to watch. They only mustered 86 points, 25 points in the second half combined. That was awful. They had 60. They led the game 65 to, I'm not sure what, maybe it was 65 or 61-51. Yeah, 61-51 at the end of halftime in Game 6, and then they ended up losing by 31 in the second half because they only scored 25 points. So that was awful. But no, I think they lost. Yeah, I think they lost they lost the second half of Game 6, 64 to 30, 61 to 25, I think it was. So, there's something like that. So that was awful. But then obviously after Game 6 ended, I was like, okay, yeah, now we have exactly the situation Houston wanted. They wanted Golden State in their building for Game 7. And then obviously the news dropped that Chris Paul couldn't play. And that is when I was done with the NBA. I was so upset that he wasn't able to play, because obviously, me being a Chris Paul fan, I feel for him, because, the 2011 situation where he wasn't able to go to the Lakers because, David Stern the NBA was the owner of the New Orleans Hornets, so then they voided the trade such that he couldn't go to the Lakers to, keep balance over the league or whatever it was. So, that kind of took away his opportunity to win championships with Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol, which was very upsetting. And then now here he was up 3-2 against the defending champion Golden State Warriors, and all he has to do is be able to play in one of the games, but a hamstring had to prevent him from playing. So that was very upsetting. You could see him on the bench in Game 7, obviously very upset, slamming the chair, obviously wanting to be in there. So that was very sad to see that he couldn't play. But overall, I mean, the fact is, you have to give the Warriors some credit. They withstood the fact that Kevin Durant and Steph Curry didn't show up very much in the fourth quarters. And, Klay Thompson obviously did his typical Klay Thompson Game 6 thing, and he had 9 of 14. He shot 9 of 14 from 3 at 35 points. Very reminiscent of the 41 points that he scored in 2016 to save them in Game 6 against Oklahoma City. And Durant, I think, didn't even have that good of a game in Game 6. I don't think he shot very well. I think he might have still ended up with like 25 or 26 points, but he didn't do it efficiently. So that's for the Warriors side of things. I think that they did everything that they needed to do to win. And the fact that, just before I continue, I think it's disgraceful that Steve Kerr is trying to use the excuse that if Andre Iguodala had played, they would have won in 5 games, because you're just to me, you're just not allowed to complain about the fact that you don't have your 5th best player or your 5th most important player when you have 4 Hall of Famers on your team. I just think that it's a little bit whiny. I really don't like that. I feel like if every other team in the league has to adopt a next man up mentality, then you don't have any right to sit and complain about the fact that your 5th best player can't play, especially when you have the 2nd and 3rd best players in the NBA, or 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA in your team, and then 4 of the top 20, 25 players in the league. So, but yeah, as for Houston, I don't think they should be too discouraged by it, because, like I said, I fully believe that if Chris Paul had played in Game 6 or 7, I think they would have won the series in 7. Because I think the biggest issue with Houston is that they kind of do this thing where they play really, they lay out all their chips, I guess, in the first half, and then in the second half they kind of take turns between Chris Paul and James Harden. And I think you'll have maybe Chris Paul will generate 25 points for the team, and James Harden will generate 25 points for the team. So it ends up working out kind of well. But unfortunately, because Chris Paul wasn't there, they weren't able to do that for either Game 6 or Game 7. So I think if Chris Paul had been there and just helped their offense stay afloat so that it didn't go completely cold, because I guarantee that if Chris Paul was playing in Game 7, the team would not have missed 27 straight threes. I think Chris Paul would have made 1 or 2, and then he probably would have set up James Harden for some looks to make at least 1, 2, or 3 that he missed. Even though he had a horrific shooting series overall, I think going into Game 7, I think he was like 9 of 45 from 3 for the series. And for context, he made 9 threes up until Game 7 throughout the series, and Nick Young made 7. So when you're only making 2 more threes than Nick Young, obviously that's a problem. But Houston really didn't play that badly. Their defense really impressed me. It showed me that Mike D'Antoni can actually make strides as a defensive coach, which, that was really cool to see, that they're more than a one-trick pony, and that they can add pieces to sort of fuel their offense while implementing them into their defensive system. Because, that's the best defense I think we've seen anybody play on Golden State since 2014, since before they were the team that they are now. So Houston, kudos to them. They did a great job, and it's just unfortunate that Chris Paul wasn't able to play. But the one thing that I will say just about, obviously, because now obviously all the people who don't like James Harden have come out and are like, oh, he's a choker, we told you because, Skip Bayless has already come out and said James Harden's only a regular season player. He disappears in the playoffs, he fades. So it was nice to see Stephen A. Smith defend him and say that there's a difference between having a bad series or, having a bad game and choking, which is what I believe that to be true. I don't think James Harden necessarily choked because, he wasn't making stupid plays and he wasn't like doing out of care. He wasn't like doing all this horrible stuff that he, that could have been prevented. He was just missing shots, and, obviously that can happen to the best of them. That's happened to some of the best players in the league. Michael Jordan and Kevin Durant actually hold the record for the most missed shots in a playoff game. I don't think a lot of people know that, but you can have off games where you're just missing shots. Unfortunately for James Harden, he just had one at a bad time. I just think his offseason goal should just kind of be to improve his strength and to be, kind of take some personal inventory and just build up his legs and his muscle, and such that he can play deeper into the playoffs. Because I feel like the thing with Harden is that when he's dribbling all the time and he's handling the ball so much, he plays a style that's extremely it's extremely tiring, especially since a lot of his game is predicated on the nudge foul and the bump foul and stuff like that. And um, every level of the playoffs, obviously physicality increases. And I was listening in on some radio show, and it said that James Harden, every series in the playoffs, so like first round, second round, and Western Conference Finals, his turnovers increased every round, and then his assists and scoring decreased every round, which is obviously not good. So I think James Harden just sort of needs to build his body up for the playoffs just so that he can sustain the level at which he plays, or maybe add a different aspect to his game, such that he can play 100, 101, 102 games the same way. Because I just feel like his whole, while it's really nice to watch and it's really cool, like the fact that he can dribble and do all the shimmy stuff and the herky jerky kind of dribble this way, dribble that way, take you this way, take you that way. That's really, I think you can sustain that throughout a regular season, but when physicality increases and the playoffs get longer, you're gonna tire yourself out, which is I think why we've seen him flame out in the playoffs so many times in the past. I don't think he did this time. I think this was just a matter of him missing shots because, I mean, if he shoots like he shot 9 of 45 from three going into Game 7, like I think if he had shot maybe even like 16 or 17 of 45, then we're having a different conversation. His shot just demanded him at the wrong times. I don't think that he choked. So I just think Houston should really focus on this offseason, really try and get to the bottom of Chris Paul's health, make sure that, because it just seems like he always goes out at the worst time. Like obviously he had the hamstring injury and he played through it in Game 7 against the Spurs in 2015, and then 2016 he had to leave with a broken hand, I think, and then last year with the Clippers as well, I think he had an injury at the worst time, and this year again injury at the worst time. He really just has the worst luck. So I don't know, maybe he needs to ask LeBron how he stays so injury free, maybe do some cryotherapy or something like that. But yeah, overall the series was what I expected from the Western Conference Finals. I wanted it to go 7. I thought it would be probably the toughest series that Golden State has played, since 2016 versus Oklahoma City. I still think that series was probably a little bit tougher because then they only had 3 Hall of Famers versus now they have 4, and also they were down 3-1 in that series versus this series where they were only down 3-2. But credit to the Warriors all around. Some weird things from this series that I think kind of went unnoticed was Draymond Green, up to this point in the playoffs, is averaging 11 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists. He's actually leading their team in every statistical category. All 5. He's leading them in all the major statistical categories except for points. In the playoffs, he's leading them in rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks in the playoffs.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, and he's also leading them in turnovers. But since he's their primary playmaker, I guess since Durant and Curry kind of focus on themselves scoring wise, it happens. But also Kevin Durant, he set the all-time record for points in a Western Conference Finals, which is really weird because I don't know. You watch Game 6. Durant's impact in this series, because I watched every game of the series, but his impact through it, it really wasn't felt. He just kind of was there and he was just scoring every now and then, but it really didn't seem like he was taking anything over. He wasn't scoring at will. So it was really, it just goes to show how great of a scorer he is that even when he's literally playing poorly, he's still scoring at a clip that's allowing him to set all-time records. But that being said, he did set the record by 1 point. The previous record for points in a Western Conference Finals series was 212. It was tied between Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaq. And then, Durant obviously broke that this year with 213. So yeah, the Warriors played great. So I guess congratulations to them for being able to put themselves in a situation to win another championship. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so this series was in a lot of ways exactly what we expected, and in a lot of ways it wasn't. So I think something that we have been, I know we mentioned this in the last podcast, actually, the teams that were actually better were winning the playoff series because of it. And that's not to say that the Rockets are better than the Warriors, but I feel like we would have gotten a better idea of that if Chris Paul wasn't injured. So that's a great point that the Rockets were basically thrown into having to play the same game that they had to do before Chris Paul was there. They played a lot more isolation, which is obviously a problem, as we saw in Game 1 for them, because they had to go through James Harden, and a lot of their role players were still struggling. Eric Gordon had finally gotten his pants back on and was doing pretty well, but all the other role players were being held onto the bench and like not getting any playing time. Aminu actually got back into the rotation, which was interesting because D'Antoni has a big habit of once he takes you out of the rotation, you do not get back in for the rest of the playoffs. So that was good. That was good that he made it back in, but Ryan Anderson had completely disappeared from the court. I'm trying to think of who else. There were only 7 players that were playing in any game for the Rockets, and when the seventh man is only playing like 13 minutes, that means that basically your entire starting five is going to be playing like 40 minutes a night. And I think that anyone who says that Chris Paul's injury couldn't at the very least be correlated with the fact that he was playing like 40 minutes a night, like in games 4 and 5, he had played 80 minutes in total, and a hamstring injury obviously is going to be highly correlated with fatigue because I mean it's just think about it. Like you hear when people say, "Ooh, I pulled a hammy," or "Ooh, I got a hamstring strain." That's because either they were overexerting themselves or their hamstrings have been firing too much over too long of a period of time. You see that a lot in the late quarters of NFL games, where like some quarterback is running and then he's grabbing his leg. That's not good. So I think there's definitely a lot of correlation there for Chris Paul getting injured, and I don't think that it would have swung the series, to be honest, because I think that Golden State just was the better team out there, and they would have prevailed regardless. I think that Game 6 of the game that I actually managed to watch was fascinating because the Golden State's very interesting in the first half. I don't know if they're trying to figure out like who's hot and who's not, which I would really respect if they were doing that, but I don't think so. I think they're just a slow starting team, but they don't put up a lot of points in the first half. Obviously, in most of the games in the series, I would have to check how many exactly. I think they were down in the first half. And every time, just like we talked about in the last podcast, in the third quarter, they come roaring to life and then they put up like 30, 40 points. And then they just run the other team out of the building. And then you just have to hope that you can survive if you're the other team or build up enough of a lead in the first half. And in games 6 and 7, the Rockets weren't able to do that. And they went cold when the Warriors went hot. And that was really all there was to it. So on the subject of that Game 7 3-point drought, obviously the longest in NBA playoff history, missing 27 shots in a row. I think that spanned. It was more than a quarter, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was more than a quarter. I think it went from I think it was all of the third quarter until I think someone made I think Eric Gordon maybe made or no, it wasn't even Eric Gordon. It was some I think it was PJ Tucker. I think made one in the fourth that finally ended it. I think it was from like the beginning of the third quarter until like I think maybe 9 or 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It was quite a long time.
Okay, yeah. So essentially, the worst possible time you could have it come against the Warriors, and obviously they're just going to run you out of the building when that happens. But if you just look at it based on simple calculations and using the Rockets' free-point percentage in the regular season, that would happen about 1 in 72,000 times. So that sounds really insane. It's not incredibly crazy because if you think about it, how many times are you likely to have? How many? Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I was just surprised, frankly.
Oh yeah, no, I was just blowing my nose. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So if you think about it, like you're like, okay, how many 27 free pointers happen in an NBA game? Like, how many sample sets are you actually going to have when you're analyzing this? And you probably think, okay, it's going to be 2 per NBA game. But that's not how you have to analyze this. You have to look at it as a rolling sample set where you're looking at the first free pointer taken and then the 27th free pointer taken, and then that's one sample set. And then another sample set is the second free pointer taken to the 28th. So really, you would have about 27 per game. So it makes it a little more believable, but even still, based on that, like I'll do a simple calculation right now, just 27 times 82, so that's the predicted amount of those stretches you have in a given season. That's about 2,000. Now, multiply that by 36. Okay, so you would expect a stretch like this to happen about once every NBA season. So
yeah,
it's not incredibly crazy, but obviously it's pretty crazy. And even though it is relatively simple calculations, I mean, even though they probably use binomial distribution, which is so simple that even like a mid-year AP statistics student could perform it, there's still some value in that number. But I'm curious to see what you think about this. So obviously, how you rack up 27 missed shots in a row by taking the same shot over and over again, even when you are missing it. And that goes back to I don't know if it would be old-fashioned or the new age idea that like if you're missing a shot, if you're cold from like a given area, you should keep shooting it because eventually one's going to go down, which is a bit of gambler's fallacy. But do you think that if you're cold, you should keep shooting that same shot? Because I've seen a lot of pundits that said like the Rockets should have started driving to the lane once they were missing so often from free.
I mean, I think it depends who you are. I think if you're Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, yes, you keep shooting. If you're Trevor Ariza, don't keep shooting because like you're 0 of 12 from the field. Like make one. Like just do something. He had 0 points. Like if you're a player like him and you're 6'9" or however tall you are, like just cut once and make a layup, and then or maybe get to the free throw line a few times, and you can see maybe like I don't necessarily I don't fully believe that if you're missing you should keep shooting because like I said it depends who you are like because like for Steph Curry for example he's notorious for this. He'll have games when he starts off like from like he'll start off the game like 1 of 5 or 1 of 6 from three, but then he'll finish the game like 7 of 15 from three because like he's literally like I mean at his peak he's been like a 45% 3-point shooter, and that's like and he attempts like 900 a season, so like his numbers are reliable because he shoots so many that like you can tell like, and I mean just in general he's the greatest shooter of all time, so like you can tell, but like for someone like I said, Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon, like yes, and credit to Eric Gordon because he actually did do this. Like it's like when you're not, I do believe that if you sort of if you get to the if you see a shot go in, I do sort of feel like it can raise your confidence and to the degree where you can be like, okay, yeah, like all right, I can still score. It's not like I'm completely foreign to putting the ball in the basket. Like I can make the basket. I do feel like it helps to make more shots. So like yeah, I mean if Clay and Steph were missing, I would tell them to keep shooting. But I mean when you're Trevor Ariza and like you have to contribute something. You can't have 0 points in the Western Conference Finals Game 7. Like you just can't. You cannot be on the starting five of the last three teams remaining in the NBA and win 65 games in the regular season and be the number one seed and have home court advantage for Game 7 of the Western Finals, which are essentially the NBA Finals, and then have 0 points. Like you can't do that. Like I mean, and that goes for that goes for any player left in the playoffs, Houston included. Like you cannot, and even Boston, you cannot have a starter who has 0 points. Like you just can't. So for a player like him, yeah, I would have liked to see him stop shooting and maybe try and get a few points at least, just so he could contribute something. But I mean, the fact that he just was not giving up. He was just like, oh yeah, let me shoot another three. And I mean, the worst part to me is like when you get one of those threes that's like so close to falling and it doesn't go in. I feel like that should be an indicator to you, like, okay, yeah, like my shot's really not falling. Like I should really like make a couple points at the rim or something. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe he saw the poor officiating in Game 7 and decided against going to the basket because he didn't think that he would get a foul call, which that's actually fair. I thought the officiating in Game 7 was absolutely horrendous. Scott Foster was on the call, and Chris Paul is 0 for 5 in the playoffs when in games officiated by Scott Foster, and James Harden, I think, is 1 of 4 in games officiated by Scott Foster. He is really not – he really does not call – like he has a very tight whistle in big situations, which, obviously sometimes you prefer that and sometimes you hate it. But, I mean, there were some instances where Eric Gordon, he went to the basket on one play, and he literally got like sandwiched in between Kevin Durant and Draymond Green. Like they like body slammed him from each side, and he like fell, and they didn't call anything. Like the Houston was not getting calls that they should have gotten, in my opinion. And James Harden was not getting some calls that he definitely should have gotten, in my opinion, as well. There were two shots, there were two fouls on 3-pointers that he should have gotten that weren't called, and I don't mean in the sense of the typical James Harden where like they come off the screen and you jump into them. Like they were legitimate foul calls that like, they hit him like in the face as he was attempting, and he made one, but they called the foul before the shot, even though it clearly wasn't. Like even the commentators were like, that should be a 4-point play. And he made the shot, but they waved off the basket because they said that the foul was before. So, I mean, if officiating had went a little bit differently, I do think this could have been Houston's game. But obviously you can't change it now. It was just the worst thing about it to me, beyond Chris Paul's injury, was that this, in my opinion, was a game that the referees really could have. I think the referees had too much of an impact on Houston's chance to win. I think that they really like Golden State was getting calls on like Kevin Durant was shooting fadeaway jumpers, and like PJ Tucker would literally tap him on the elbow, and they would call that a shooting foul. But Eric Gordon and James Harden are getting hammered in the paint, and they're not getting calls. So I don't know. I don't know what was up with that, but it was unfortunate to watch.
Yeah, and I don't even know if we can claim that there was like some NBA conspiracy that like the referees wanted the Warriors to win, because I don't know that the NBA did want the Warriors to win in this case. But yeah, it was definitely interesting because in a way you're happy that like James Harden and Chris Paul aren't getting those fouls called for them, because obviously they're very prone to just having fouls called where like they're taking a 3-pointer and someone taps their arm, or like someone doesn't even touch them, but they get too close to them and commit the what was it, the I'm trying to remember his name, the Zaza Pachulia foul on Kawhi Leonard, where you're jumping into them and you just don't give them space to land. But at the same time, if you are driving to the rim and you get body checked, you have to call that foul. You can't just not call it.
That's also another horrible thing that the official should have been on is that Zaza Pachulia there were some left corner threes where, like, when you're standing in front of Golden State's bench,
yeah,
there were some like Zaza Pachulia was like he had his toes like on the court, like he was that close to the people shooting those shots and like screaming in their ear and stuff. And like, I get it, you can yell, but I mean, he was practically on the court. It's like they had 6 defenders for left corner threes. It was horrible. And obviously, you can't. I mean, like, I'm not saying that you have to give him a technical foul or anything. Like, I'm just saying, like, you should say to him, like, hey, like, back away from the left corner. Like, you're not even on the court. Like, it was horrendous to watch the officiating. But I mean, I'm not going to be one to blame referees on a win or loss. I don't believe that's. I don't think that's fair. I think that, I mean, to me, this really came down to Trevor Ariza being a disappointment. Because I mean, if he's 0 for 12, but I mean, if he's 4 for 12 or 3 for 12, then maybe we're talking about a different game. So, yeah.
Yeah, and on your point earlier about Eric Gordon stopping taking frees, it's probably just because he was used to in this playoffs not being hot, so he knew what to do. But yeah,
I mean, because he was missing badly. So like he clanked one that like didn't even like it was like underneath the rim, hit the backboard.
Yeah,
like, it was bad. He was bad from 3. But I mean, the one thing I liked about Eric Gordon is that he actually tried. Like you could see him, like he was doing stuff that I really didn't even know he could do. There was one isolate. He isolated on Klay Thompson, and he dribbled like between his legs, drove, spun, and threw a lob. Like it was, I didn't know he could do that at all. But it was really entertaining to watch. He did like he chained together like 4 dribble moves and then threw an alley oop to Clint Capella that connected for an assist. So. I mean, it's cool to see that he has that skill set. I really didn't know that. But I think Eric Gordon is skills like that, I think, are better off the bench. So I feel like when he's forced into a starting role, he can play well. But I feel like when he's a starter, his numbers don't really reflect, his best ability, because I feel like he is not really he's not really like someone that you can like. He's not a playmaker to the point where he can replace Chris Paul in the starting lineup like that. So, Houston really doesn't have any playmakers other than James Harden and Chris Paul, and the fact that they only have 2, whereas the Warriors have 4, in Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, and Andre Iguodala. It's like when the Warriors are missing 1, they still have 3, but when Houston's missing 1, they only have 1. So, I think that's one of the reasons why LeBron James always wants multiple basketball minds on the floor, because, even if George Hill, for example, I think has really helped them, because even though he's not a big time scorer and doesn't contribute on the box score, he's still able to make plays for other people and get people in the right positions where they're supposed to be, just a floor general. So I think Houston was really missing, their second floor general, which is ultimately why I think they lost, because, I mean, without Andre Iguodala, the Warriors were only 1-4 against Houston prior to Game 7. And then throughout the prior to, I think, Game 6, in the 7-game set, including the regular season, Houston had beaten them 4 out of 7. So I personally think Chris Paul would have made the difference, because I think he would have made up for the fact that Trevor Ariza had 0 points. Eric Gordon probably would have had a little bit less, but I think with Chris Paul being in the starting lineup, I think he probably could have set Trevor Ariza up to make more shots, and then the combination of Chris Paul and Eric Gordon scoring would have trumped the combination of Eric Gordon and Trevor Ariza scoring. So that's why I think Houston would have been able to pull it out. But I mean, like I said, Golden State obviously did a tremendous job. Kevin Durant had a good game in Game 7. So They're going back to the finals, regardless of whether or not I like it.
Woohoo! But yeah, no, it would have made things very interesting at the least, and I'm not even gonna try and say if the Rockets could have won it because I don't know. The Warriors could have done something different. They could have handled defensive assignments differently. The Rockets could have handled defensive assignments differently. They could have ran different offensive schemes. Like you just don't know. So there's that. Who knows? Maybe it would have even gotten overtime in Game 7, and then who knows what would have happened. But yeah, it it definitely shook things up, and that was unfortunate. And yeah, Trevor Ariza not scoring at all, that's completely unacceptable. And I was really surprised myself to see what Steve Kerr said about Andre Iguodala, because it almost felt like he was spitting in the Rockets' face in a way where he was like, I don't care that Chris Paul wasn't here. What about Andre Iguodala?
Yeah, come on. Like, the dude is averaging 7 points and isn't a good defender anymore because he's aged. Like, just stop. Like, he's not even a good 3-point shooter anymore. But also, just the one thing that I guess could sort of bother me the most about it was we would have been able to see an even NBA Finals for the first time since like 2010, maybe. Like, because you had Kobe and Powell going against Rondo, Pierce, Allen, and KG when KG wasn't who he was,
Yeah,
and Rondo had been injured and stuff. Like, it's like because Chris Paul apparently he has the same injury that James Harden had earlier in the regular season that forced him to miss 3 weeks. So then basically what we would have been able to see was we would have been able to see LeBron versus James Harden, and it would have been a battle about who can create for the role players better. And
and it might have even been LeBron actually, so that would have been interesting.
Yeah, like it would have been like James Harden, and he would have been creating for his team mostly everything offensively, and LeBron would have been creating everything for his team offensively, and then defensively, like I feel like even though Houston's defense collectively would be much better than Cleveland's, I feel like because LeBron is just in my eyes he's just a clear tier above James Harden. I really feel it would have evened out to where we would have been able to see a really competitive finals through the first five games, assuming Chris Paul can't come back until the end of the series. So that would have been great to see. I think it would have been a classic NBA Finals between two teams led by one star, sort of like what we never see because now we always either see if you go back in history, like you always see 2 against 2 or 2 against 3 or 3 against 1 or 4 against 1. So because I guess people would argue that 2016 and 2017 were 3 against 3 and then 4 against 3. But in my Kevin Love is averaging 8 points per game against Golden State. He's averaging 13 points per game in the playoffs. I just don't even want to hear that Kevin Love is a superstar or an all-star even. He just doesn't. He's averaging 13 points per game on 38% shooting, and only him and LeBron are the only two Cavs in double digits for their playoff averages. And LeBron is averaging 34 to 35, and Kevin Love is averaging 13. So, and he didn't even play in game 6 or game 7 because he left game 6 with like 3 minutes in the game, 3 minutes into the game. So, I mean, the finals is going to be horrible as a result of the Warriors making it, which is honestly why I didn't want them to. I mean, I'll be honest. Even Boston, we're going to get to the Eastern Conference Finals in a second, but I think Boston would probably be more challenging than Cleveland for Golden State because, I mean, Boston can at least play defense and they at least play team ball. They don't rely on one player. So the difference between, I guess, playing Cleveland and playing Boston is that when you play Cleveland, all you have to do is defend the role players, and then LeBron's going to do his best, and it's not going to be enough. But in Boston, you'd have to defend everyone, and everybody is everybody is a threat because Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Terry Rozier, they can present matchup problems because they're good defensively and everything. So, I mean, a different finals matchup than this, regardless of what it was, would have been very interesting. But nothing we can do.
Okay, yeah, it's a shame, and that would have been interesting to see as well because I'm sure Brad Stevens could have shown us something really interesting in a way to beat the Warriors. He probably wouldn't have done much against them, but at least he would have had an interesting scheme. But one last thing to wrap up this series, I was really happy to see Mike D'Antoni not try and send out Chris Paul for Game 7. I mean, he must have been really hurt if D'Antoni didn't even try and put him out there for a couple of minutes, but that would have just been really annoying to see like the offense really screwed up because like you have an injured player limping around the court, and then you would have had a whole bunch more people just saying, "Oh, if Mike D'Antoni hadn't made the stupid mistake to bring in Chris Paul in Game 7, then the Rockets could have won." much rather have it just be okay. The player's injured, he's gone, so we have the rest of the team versus the Warriors, and we get to see how that works. So that was really nice, but yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't enough for the Rockets, and that's a real shame for them. So, Rockets, we say goodbye to you. So, what do you think the Rockets need to do in the upcoming NBA offseason? So, obviously, the biggest thing is figure out the Chris Paul free agency, but is there anything else they have to really do?
I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Clint Capella. He's a restricted free agent. The Rockets, I think, not general manager. I think their team owner. He said that or someone. I don't think it was either because their owner is an old guy. It was some young guy. Maybe he's like the president of operations or something, but it wasn't Daryl Morey. I don't know. So someone from their organization said that their priorities are we have to re-sign Chris Paul, and then we want to keep Clint Capella. So obviously he made a clear distinction about what the priority is and then what their secondary goal is. So um, it's going to be interesting because Clint Capella, I don't know what kind of. I mean, he's not in a situation where they're going to be easily winning championships or anything, so it's not going to be easy to take less money. But I mean, the Suns are apparently want to offer him a max deal.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's
So I don't know. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know if he'd rather be in a winning situation and make good money, or be in a horrible situation for maybe 2, 3, 4 more years and make great money. So
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think they should try and make him a reasonable enough offer to where they're not overpaying him, because you never want to get stuck into the cycle of overplaying players who are role players, because he's not a star by any means. He's a very good player. He's an excellent role player, but he's not. He's still very limited offensively. So I mean, I think if Phoenix offers him the max, you got to let him go. And then that allows you to make more room for LeBron, and that you can sign your role players. So I think Houston, obviously, they should try and recruit LeBron. They should try and get James Harden to work on his strength in the offseason so that he doesn't wear down at the end of the playoffs. And then they should, get some opinions on Chris Paul's health to see what he can do to stay healthy for longer. Or maybe you just play him extremely few minutes in the regular season just so that he can rest up as much as possible, give him more days of rest. I know he missed a lot of games this year anyway, but I mean, I think every year for the past 4 years he's been playing less games. So I mean, I think you got to give him more rest. Maybe I don't know. I really don't know what you could do with him, because I mean, I would suggest not playing him any back-to-backs like they did with Dwayne Wade in 2014 it was, but I mean, obviously that made it such that Wade wasn't conditioned at all in the NBA Finals, so you don't want to do that either. But I don't know. They just got to figure out basically the Chris Paul situation, make sure that he still wants to stay there, because apparently I got a notification today that apparently he's already trying to recruit LeBron James. So I guess maybe that means he'll stay there, or maybe he'll only stay if LeBron comes or something. But they want to try and re-sign Chris Paul, hope to re-sign Clint Capella for a reasonable amount of money, focus on James Harden and Chris Paul off-season conditioning and health and strength, and then try and recruit LeBron. So that's what they got to do this off-season, I think. Because, and I don't know, maybe they even have to reevaluate their system and see if this whole isolation thing will work and if it's good enough of a system to win a championship, because now that Golden State's beaten them once, I don't think they're going to be able to beat them again just if they have Chris Paul that next time. Like, I just feel like the Warriors will adapt and be like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, we're just going to turn on all the Jets and have all of our stars go for 25 and then whatever. Like, So, yeah, that's what I think Houston needs to do this offseason.
Yeah, I agree with that. If they can get LeBron, they're obviously in fantastic situation, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a situation where Chris Paul just refused to sign with anybody until he found out where LeBron went. Obviously, that'd be a horrible scenario for the Rockets. Basically, it's him doubling down, and that's not good. But yeah, the Clint Capella situation, that really reminded me of. I wanted to make a comparison to Tyson Chandler because obviously it's a center that went to the Suns, but it's not like that. It's like Chandler Parsons, actually, never Maverick, where the Mavericks obviously won the 2011 NBA Finals. Rockets didn't do that, but you could say that Clint Capella had a similar breakout season. And obviously Chandler Parsons went into free agency looking to get more money, and I believe he got the max deal with. Crap, I'm trying to remember. Do you remember what team Chandler Parsons went to in that free agency?
In 2016?
Yeah, I think so.
He went to Memphis.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna check on Spot Track right now just to make sure I'm.
He was in Houston, then he was in Dallas, then he was in Memphis.
Yeah, Let me check this deal to make sure that it's okay. Yeah, he was making $23 million a year, so yeah,
Yeah,
he was making a ton of money with Memphis, and the Mavericks obviously made the smart decision not to re-sign him to the max deal that he wanted, and that proved to be the correct decision, as Chandler Parsons sucks now. So
he's one of the most injury riddled. Oh my god, he is hurt all the time. Even the Memphis is not. I feel like Memphis is really one of those cities that sort of they wrap around their stars and they really love them. Even Memphis fans chant, "You suck" at him. Like he's just not. He is nothing like he was after that ACL tear. He is completely done. Like I would even say his decline is worse than Derrick Rose's. Like
oh wow.
he went from scoring like 17, 18 points a game. Now he scores like 4 or 5. I mean, at least Derrick Rose still has some explosiveness, but Chandler Parsons is just his shot is gone, his speed is gone, his everything is gone.
Yeah, that's pretty serious, and I didn't realize he had that Achilles injury. That's another if ever in our cap for our discussion about DeMarcus Cousins when he eventually comes back and all the comparisons we've been making. But
Yeah.
yeah, like it's you just can't pay a star. You can't overpay stars, especially if you are dealing with a luxury tax. And like they're getting a new owner now, so you don't really know what your finances are going to be in the future. So you want to be safe on that and not pull Portland Trailblazers and just overpay everyone that you can, expecting the salary cap to just keep rising every year. So
Yeah.
yeah, don't cut ties with Clint Capella if you have to, because ultimately you have depth at the position and you can hope to get better players in the future. I know Zucchini is looking great defensively. He's not very good offensively right now, but all the Rockets need is him to just be able to dunk the ball and shoot from like 5 feet away. If he can do those two things, they're fine at the center position. So not exactly a ton of skills that he would have to learn to get up to speed, but it'll probably take a couple years before that happens. But let's face it, I just want to see a player named Zuki, and they call him Zucchini, and just watch him ravage the NBA from the painted area. So
Also, this is something that's not being talked about. I'm not really sure why people haven't discussed this, but given that LeBron James cannot like I really can't believe that nobody has even like mentioned this at all. But if LeBron doesn't sign in Houston and they lose Clint Capella, so they have more money to give, and they can sign a max deal, and Kawhi Leonard turns down the supermax in San Antonio, they should go after Kawhi because I mean, in my eyes, if you have James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, I think you would automatically have the second best duo in the league. Like, because I mean, if you think about it, like, if you're going by like the best players in the world, right? Like, Durant and Steph are like 2 and 3, but then Harden and Kawhi are like 4 and 5. Like, those 4 players, like Steph, Harden, LeBron, KD, Kawhi, or no, those 4, Steph, Harden, Kawhi, KD, like those are the 4 those are the other 4 best players in the world, like in my opinion. So, I mean, if you have the cap room, and obviously the Kawhi situation in San Antonio has been really weird, and nobody really knows if he's actually going to stay in San Antonio. Nobody knows if he wants to go to a bigger market. But if he does want to go to a bigger market, you're still in Houston, or you're in a big market. You're still in Texas, where I guess your family lives now or whatever. So you're at least in the same state, okay, and then your opportunity for endorsements would be much better, and you're playing with much better talent because if you don't have Clint Capella, Kawhi is brilliant because the thing is you have, in my eyes, you would have the best set of wings in the league because I guess currently the best wing duo in the league is Kawhi or Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, but Kawhi and James Harden, like, yeah, obviously you can make a debate about this or whatever, but you have I'll just say this as a blanket statement. You have like the best offensive player in the league and the best defensive player in the league, and both of them are pretty good at each. Like Kawhi, obviously a much better two-way player than James Harden, but I'm not sure if you watched all of the series against Golden State. But James Harden can play defense. Like he's actually really good at when he's completely engaged. He can actually be a really good defender. He's really good at getting in the passing lanes. He blocked a Draymond Green dunk attempt, which was really surprising. I really didn't. And then he's actually sneakily athletic. Like he threw down a really good dunk against Draymond Green and dunked it a few times, which for some reason he doesn't do nearly as much in the regular season. But yeah, I think if Houston can't get their hands on LeBron, I think that the next logical step is you have to watch over the Kawhi situation because if you can get Kawhi Leonard, I think that immediately makes you, a top 3 contender, depending on where LeBron goes, a top 3 contender for the NBA championship because I mean, Mike D'Antoni's system, I think, works in such a way that you can have a versatile two-way player like Kawhi who's very good at shooting, scoring, and defending, and it just elevates their entire thing because, I mean, he's basically just the world's greatest upgrade in the world from players like PJ Tucker and Trevor Ariza. So, man, then you even strengthen your bench because then you can move one of either PJ Tucker or Trevor Ariza to the bench to come off the bench with Eric Gordon, and then you have like Chris Paul, Kawhi, James Harden, PJ Tucker, and whoever they fill in at center. I guess it would have to be like Nene maybe, but at that point, then your team, from a talent perspective, your team is better. So obviously, you're going to have that one player that's not going to be good, sort of like the Warriors, and they have to play Zaza and all that. But I think they should definitely watch over the Kawhi situation, see if they can get him if he's not committed to staying in San Antonio, because I feel like that's first and foremost, it's an excellent situation for him. It has everything that he wants. He still gets to stay close to where he lives right now, unless he lives in LA all the time. I don't know what his deal is, but he wouldn't be that far from where he is right now. And it's a bigger city, bigger market. So, if he turns down that Supermax, I would love to see Kawhi in Houston.
Yeah, and just on that point, I pulled up a Google Trends page to corroborate what I was seeing on just basic Google searches, and it looks like the search traffic for Kawhi Leonard peaked in the week of April 15th to April 21st, and has at about 100 searches. Does that make sense? Is this like 100 per 1,000? Because that number doesn't make any sense.
100 per 1,000, yeah.
I don't know. Well, we'll assume that it's just a ratio or something. So 100, whatever that means, the unit in that week, and then it's dropped all the way down now to, let's see, 21. So that's about a fifth of where it was at. So obviously, if they're talking about,
I think talk has died down after the Spurs got eliminated from the playoffs. I think people have stopped really thinking about it because I think the news came out that the Spurs are prepared to offer him the max deal. So I guess now people are thinking, oh, okay, yeah, max deal, he'll resign. But just in the case that he doesn't resign, I don't know, because like you said, during that week when all those rumors were active and stuff, like there were plenty of rumors, like 8th pick plus George Hill plus Kevin Love to San Antonio for Kawhi Leonard to Cleveland, and Philadelphia's number 10 pick plus Markelle Fultz plus Robert Covington plus Dario Saric to San Antonio for Kawhi Leonard. And that way you have Philadelphia with Kawhi, Ben Simmons, Embiid, and then you sign LeBron. Like, all these scenarios were out about him. So I don't know why Houston was never discussed, because I think that would be pretty formidable. But, whatever the case may be.
Okay, so apparently it actually is a ratio. So it's 100 is the peak popularity, and then 50 is half as popular as the peak probability, and then 0 means there's not enough data. So that was kind of interesting for anyone that wants to use Google Trends in the future. But yeah, I actually pulled up a article from about a month ago that had a sports book that put out its betting lines for where they expected Kawhi Leonard to go, and yeah, I don't even see the Rockets on here. It has the Spurs at 5-8, which is about. I don't know how to read betting lines, to be honest with you. Do you know how to read betting lines?
I don't actually. I've never understood the whole like plus this, minus that, I don't know any of that stuff.
Okay, I'm just gonna take a guess and say it's like 30%. Then they have the 76ers at I can't even do the probabilities. I'll just give it for anyone that knows them. The 76ers at 9-2, Lakers at 13-2, Clippers at 7-1, Celtics at 11-1, Cavaliers at 12-1. Like that would ever happen. The Knicks at 14-1, because Kawhi Leonard screams Knicks. The Hornets at 15-1, and then the Bucks at 15-1. So that's
the Bucks would be cool.
that would be interesting, yeah. But
it'd be sweet, but it would never happen.
I can't even believe that the Knicks are above the Rockets there, because that seems like people are completely missing on it. That's good on you for noticing that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That's weird, but I think the only reason the Knicks are on there, I think, is because he has his doctors in New York or something, so people are automatically drawing conclusions. But that's also done.
Yeah, that's a pretty loose correlation. Okay. Well, either way, I think that's about all we have to say on the Rockets, and yeah. Okay. So I guess we can move on to the Eastern Conference Finals now. So in the Eastern Conference Finals, we had a pretty similar situation in terms of how the series progressed. It went from 2-1 for the Celtics to 2-2 Cavs. Then the Celtics got the fifth game, which we were fearful that they would in the last podcast. They won it, unfortunately, because, they're great at home. So that put the Cavs at a 2-game deficit, and they would have to win every game remaining in the season if they wanted to survive, we expected that they would win Game 6 because the Celtics have been horrible on the road and the Cavs have been average at home. I think that's a positive way of saying it. And they won that game predictably. So that set up an amazing Game 7 that I think we were both super excited for and that I actually was able to watch. And yeah, it was an amazing game because we got the kind of game that we always want. It was a super grinded out game. It was very low scoring. I think it was like 41-39 after the first half or something like that. And, the general benchmark for points is probably right there. And then the Cavs managed to pull away once the Celtics started going cold. Well, not even going cold because they were cold throughout the game, but the Cavs finally started to heat up and they got the role player contributions that they so desperately needed from Jeff Green and J.R. Smith. So what did you see in the last 3 games of the series?
Well, I was this series. I feel like I feel like you'll probably agree with me on this. This series went how I expected the first round series with Milwaukee to go. Or not how I expected, but what that series probably should have went. Like it should have went home, and it should have went home, and then the road team wins Game 7.
Yeah,
because and that's what happened here. It's like we thought that Giannis would sort of emerge and maybe make a statement in Game 7 and finally get his team to the second round finally, but that didn't happen. But obviously leave it to LeBron to do what other people didn't do, and he played wonderfully. He had a really bad Game 1 in this series, and then he had a great Game 2, but they still lost. And then Games 3 and 4, he held it down, and they played well. And at this point, we always talk about LeBron so much. It's really hard to detail, I guess, what he did so well. But particularly in the last 3 games, I thought he obviously showed that he was engaged defensively. He really anchored them because they played really good defense in both Games 6 and 7, like you mentioned. He was facilitating for everyone. The Jeff Green insertion into the starting lineup, and I guess not the starting lineup, but the minutes that he played when Kevin Love was out in Game 6, I think they might have found a little blessing in disguise. I think I feel like their best lineup now on the floor that you'll want to play is you're going to want George Hill, Kyle Korver, LeBron James, Jeff Green, and Kevin Love. I feel like that's probably your most viable option because I think Jeff Green allows because what I think the main thing that they're going to want to do for the finals is Kevin Love has always been so limited against Draymond Green that he just, like I said, he only averages 8 points per game against the Warriors in the finals in the 2 years that he's played, because obviously he didn't play in 2015. But Draymond Green completely takes Kevin Love out of the game, so I think that having Jeff Green defended by Draymond Green will do much better for Cleveland, because I think Jeff Green is, he's bigger. He's not bigger, but he's most definitely, I think, stronger. He's more athletic. I think that'll be more of a difficulty for Draymond to defend, and then you put Kevin Love as the defensive matchup for their center or whoever's not Draymond, I guess, so like Kevon Looney or whatever, because Kevin Love should be able to have an advantage over an inexperienced player like Kevon Looney, since he is like a 10-year, 11-year NBA veteran at this point. I think that the finals will be bad, but as far as the Eastern Conference Finals series went, I think it just goes to show how LeBron you could probably put him on any team, and as long as he has at least one double-digit scorer, then he can take that team to the finals. It's just another sentiment to his greatness, because to me, this is probably the third greatest accomplishment of his career. You have the first, obviously, being the 3-1 comeback from Golden State, down 3-1 against Golden State, 73-10 win team. That's number one for sure. Number two is for me the 2007 NBA Finals, but it's not because of LeBron carrying or anything. It's simply because of who they beat. Because I don't think people realize this, but in the 2007 playoffs, when LeBron James, as a 22-year-old fourth-year player,
hold up. They better realize it, because we just went through this last podcast, if you remember.
Yeah, exactly. And, he beat Jason Kidd, Vince Carter, a team that had been to the finals, the Brooklyn Nets, in the second round. And then he beat, obviously, the Pistons, which were the remnants of the 2004 championship team with like Chauncey Billups and Rasheed Wallace and Tayshaun Prince and whoever else was on those teams. But I know the debate has sort of been back and forth about what's more impressive, 2007 or 2018. From a carrying perspective, 2018 is definitely more impressive, because that 2017 could actually play defense, and I think they had 2 double-digit scorers instead of 1. and just defensively, the 2018 team is completely horrible, whereas the 2017 team can actually play defense. But in terms of, just in terms of, I guess, a greatness perspective, I think 2007 is still more impressive because, like I said, he was 22 years old. It was only his fourth year in the league, and he beat some, 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on his path to the NBA Finals. Whereas this year, um, he probably didn't, he beat Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who will probably end up Hall of Famers, but, they're not at that point right now in their career. They're still young. And then in the second round, I don't think DeRozan or Lowry should be Hall of Famers. And then Victor Oladipo, maybe we don't know yet. This was really just his first best year, his first great year. I mean, so this was extremely impressive of him. But I'll give credit to Jeff Green because he did play very big in Game 7. He showed up when they needed to, and that's probably about all the love that I can give to any role player on Cleveland because everyone else played pretty poorly. And that's a shame. But, LeBron played great. Jeff Green played good. And they're headed back, which is impressive. But I guess the main thing that worries me is that Cleveland really, they still kind of seem to be stuck in this whole thing where it's like they'll go up a little bit, but then they'll like take their foot off the gas and then they'll slow down and then, the other team will get back into it. That was a problem earlier in the playoffs. I think they still have a problem. I don't think they haven't had a blowout, I think, since they played Toronto, maybe in Game 2 or Game 4, maybe. I can't remember exactly, but there haven't really been any dominant performances from Cleveland thus far in the playoffs, and you're going to need at least one if you want to even get a game off of Golden State. So, but I think Boston was a good test for them defensively because they actually needed to play real defense to beat Boston. It wasn't going to be just another series like Toronto where LeBron can be fantastic and everyone else plays fine or bad or whatever it is, and then they still win. So hopefully they can keep up their defensive intensity and kind of keep it together for a full 46 to 48 minutes. It's just so they can get a game off of Golden State because that's what I think. That's the most that I think they'll be able to do. But the Eastern Conference Finals, it was the show of LeBron. LeBron impressed. He actually also set the NBA record for points before the finals, like in the postseason record for points heading into an NBA Finals. He holds it, I think, by like 15 points ahead of Michael Jordan because now he had 612 this postseason. I think the previous record was Michael Jordan with like 591 or something like that. So, LeBron was impressive, and it's going to be. I'm not going to say it's cool to see him in another NBA final. I'm glad he's going to another NBA Finals because now he's. Before Golden State made it, that this Cleveland team was only the 5th team to make the finals 4 years in a row. Now Golden State is obviously the 6th. But prior to that, there have only been 6 teams in the history of the NBA to make 4 consecutive finals. It's been Bill Russell Celtics, Larry Bird Celtics, Magic Showtime Lakers, LeBron James Miami Heat, LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers this year, and then the Golden State Warriors this year. LeBron James has now made 8 consecutive finals. Michael Jordan only ever made 3 consecutively. Kareem only made 4. Magic only made 4 consecutively. Shaq only made 3 consecutively. But he's made 8, so that's very impressive. And it's going to be something that is going to be used to elevate his legacy in the future. Unfortunately, he's not going to win the finals, but the fact that he got there is still a cool accomplishment.
Yeah, definitely. And something that I was hearing coming out of the Game 7 was that Tyronn Lue deserved a lot of credit for his performance. I think that was Mark Jackson who was saying that, and I thought that was absolutely ridiculous because the only thing that you could say that Tyronn Lue had going for him was playing Jeff Green in about the same minutes that he had been in the previous games, and that they just happened to start scoring more points. I mean, I thought that was ridiculous. And even crediting the Cavaliers' defense for its performance in holding the Celtics down to as few points as they did in the first half and the second half of Game 7. I thought that was silly as well, because really it just came down to the Celtics missing a bunch of, not crazy open threes, but they had a lot of open looks that they just missed. So there was that. I didn't understand that at all. Maybe you had a different perspective, but I know neither of us are big fans of Tyronn Lue. And then what's the other thing? Kind of forget. I think that all LeBron needed in Game 7 was just he puts up his normal stat line, has a great game, maybe a triple-double, maybe 40 points, whatever, and he just gets one role player to get 20 points in the game. That's all he needed, and that's what he got from Jeff Green, and that was great. What did you think about J.R. Smith in Game 7? I thought he was fairly impressive.
He was reliable, but I mean the problem with JR is that he'll have one good game, then he'll have 6 bad games in a row.
Well, yeah.
So I mean, like Yeah, he did have a good game seven, but I mean, he had a horrible rest of the series, and I expect him to have a horrible NBA Finals. Just to follow up tradition of how he does. He'll have one bad. Like it used to be a lot better. Like he used to have like two good games, and then he'd have like one bad game. But now it's at a point where he has one bad game, and then he has like a horrible rest of the series. But I mean, yeah, he had 12 points. He made three threes. He played 42 minutes. LeBron James actually played 48 minutes, which is sucks. But I mean,
Yeah, I saw that.
yeah, JR played 42. He played hard. He played some decent defense, and he made three threes. He only attempted all eight of his shots were 3-point attempts, and he only made three. But I guess that's you'll have to take that, I guess. And yeah, he showed up. I guess you could say. I mean, again, like it's sort of sad what the standards are for what we consider LeBron James teammates showing up. Like your starting shooting guard has 12 points, and you're like, oh wow, JR finally showed up for a game. LeBron had so much. Like no. Klay Thompson has 12 points in a game, and he's your other NBA Finals shooting guard. And it's like, oh wow, to Klay at 12, that's actually really bad. Like, wow, Klay only at 12, really. Yeah, the standards for LeBron's teammates are extremely low, and the standards for LeBron are extremely high. And that's unfortunate, but it's the truth. Jeff Green was the most impressive to me because I didn't expect 19 coming from him. I thought that it would be a struggle. I thought LeBron would probably only win this game by a couple points. I didn't expect him to have the lead that he had heading into the final stretch, but he did. His teammates were there. George Hill, I think, had 10 points, or maybe it wasn't him. Maybe Tristan Thompson had 10 points. Someone else had double digits, but yeah, he had three teammates in the starting lineup in double digits, and that's good. That's what you want. So
yeah, and just because we love doing this so much, to compare that to Michael Jordan, I just pulled up Scottie Pippen's basketball reference page and looking at his playoff per game numbers from the 8-year stretch where they were winning championships. That's including the 2 years that Michael Jordan wasn't there. So in terms of points per game, he had 19.2. He had 5.5 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 8 rebounds, and 3 turnovers. But it's actually pretty good. And yeah, like that's way more than LeBron was getting in any of his games. I don't even think Jeff Green had that in one game in this series, and certainly Kevin Love didn't. So yeah, like that's the kind of stuff that Michael Jordan's teammates were averaging. It's not even looking at someone like Dennis Rodman, who was getting down like 10 to 12 rebounds per game, but I guess you could say Tristan Thompson did the same thing. So yeah, like this is the kind of stuff that gets missed when we're trying to compare the two players, and it's very silly, honestly. That
Scottie Pippen is he's one of the players that I want to cover in when I talk about underrated players who don't get enough recognition, because I'm a huge Scottie Pippen fan. I think that his greatness is so overlooked because of who he played with, which is just stupid. Because I mean, I say this completely. I honestly believe this. I think if LeBron had played with a Scottie Pippen, like if LeBron had a Scottie Pippen who was as consistent, as good defensively, as good of a playmaker, as good of a defender overall, just someone who is as reliable, accountable, and consistent as Scottie Pippen, LeBron probably would have won the NBA championship in 2011. He would have won in 2014 and 15, meaning he would have 6 rings. And then who knows, maybe he would have been able to go to the finals in 2009 or 2010, not losing to those Orlando and Boston teams as he did in those 2 years. But I mean, because a lot of people. I mean, yes, okay. I'm not going to try and defend LeBron's horrible performance in the 2011 NBA Finals because it was bad. But I mean, it's not like Dwayne Wade or Chris Bosh are the greatest series in the world either. And in 2014, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh were basically on their last legs and not existent.
And especially in Game 1, LeBron wasn't even on his legs; he was cramping up too much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was. I mean, if LeBron had a Scottie Pippen, I really just don't. I'm going to go into how great Scottie Pippen was in a second. I don't even think some people realize what the things that he did when he didn't play with Michael Jordan. He was phenomenal. He's definitely he's like a top 5 perimeter defender. He's a top 5 defender ever, I think. But we'll get into it in a minute.
Yeah.
So
and just to stick to the series, because I know I have 2 more questions that really should help contextualize the later NBA Finals as well. So do you feel like the Cavs have a better or worse chance, and if so, if a worse chance, then by how much than they did going into the 2015 finals against the Warriors, where obviously Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love were injured?
Oh yeah, I think this year's worse because the Warriors have now evolved to the point where they have 4 Hall of Famers who are all established. Because in 2015, I think people they don't really point at this too much, but Klay Thompson and Draymond Green have really evolved into being stars, superstars, all-stars, whatever you want to call them, during this run that Golden State has been on. In 2015, this was kind of the first year of them actually playing really well, and Draymond has evolved into a much better player than he was in 2015 because that was the first time that that was the first year that he really kind of was given an opportunity to do everything that he's able to do. So, I mean, I simply think that Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green have all gotten better since 2015, and obviously now they've added Kevin Durant, who's an extremely good replacement for the Andre Iguodala that they had in 2015. While LeBron was by himself then, I really think that he's by himself now too, because I mean, even though the 2015 finals were a train wreck in terms of how little help he had, I mean, Tristan Thompson, I think, still averaged 14 points, and I think, Kyrie Irving was at least there for one game until overtime, and then, you had Matthew Dellavedova playing his heart out defensively. He's just not going to have anything. Matthew Dellavedova, I would take the Matthew Dellavedova from the 2015 NBA Finals over any player on Cleveland's roster right now other than Kevin Love. Yeah, I think this is worse just because I legitimately think this is now 1-on-4, as of back then it was sort of 1-on-3. And just because the 4 that are here now are better than the 3/4 that they had back then. So I think this is worse than 2015.
Okay, and then
they were actually a very good defensive team in 2015 as well.
Yeah, definitely saying more so than this year, which isn't saying that much. But
David Blatt wasn't a great coach, but I do think he was a little better than Toronto.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten work, actually. It'd be really interesting to see one of these teams that is obviously hiring some crappy coach or some coach that just is coming off of a losing season if they went for someone like David Blatt instead, because David Blatt was
Orlando Magic signed Steve Clifford today.
Yeah, that was
interesting.
It was a thing.
Casey still doesn't have a job. Very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting, actually, especially because he might win Coach of the Year. And that's certainly the first time that's ever happened, that you're going to have a former Coach of the Year get fired and be waiting in free agency. But speaking of Jason Tatum, obviously on the losing side of that conference finals, I was just looking, and apparently he fell 1 point shy of tying the NBA record for most playoff points by a rookie with 300 points, just behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So, on that subject, do you think this was the most impressive performance by a rookie in playoffs in at least recent history, if not ever?
I definitely think so. Because I think he's a really good two-way player as well. He's not someone that misses defensive rotations. He's not your typical rookie who just kind of gives up and gets tired. He's there every possession. He plays hard. And I think he's better than Donovan Mitchell. I know everyone loves Donovan Mitchell and loved what he was doing in Utah this season, but it goes back to the same thing. I mean, Donovan Mitchell's just a scorer. He's not much of anything else, whereas Jason Tatum is a scorer, shooter, rebounder, and defender. Obviously, he's not at the level where he's making plays for other people yet, but he has a really pure jump shot. He was playing LeBron James as good as any player in the Eastern Conference could play LeBron James. Jason Tatum was. I'm trying to think of if this would be how much of an over exaggeration this would be, but I truly believe Jason Tatum might have been. Oh gosh, he was for sure, in my opinion, a top 5 player in the Eastern Conference playoffs this year. Because when you look around, he was the best. He would have been better than anyone on Cleveland other than LeBron, that's for sure. Probably better than everyone on Indiana except for Victor Oladipo, and I truly believe better than everyone on Toronto because DeMar DeRozan obviously didn't show up this postseason. If you were to take a top 5 from the Eastern Conference playoffs this year, you'd probably take LeBron, Victor Oladipo, Giannis, Jason Tatum, and someone else. So Jason Tatum was extremely impressive. He played great defense. He had that one dunk on LeBron that was actually really impressive. I haven't seen LeBron get dunked on in a while, so that was kind of interesting. It was fun. It was fun that happened. He was there. He experienced some great moments. He had 2 dagger threes hit on him in Cleveland, and then he threw a dunk down on LeBron, and he played great. And I truly believe that he's going to be he's probably going to be either the first or second best player in Celtics history. I think he's easily going to be better than Paul Pierce because I think Paul Pierce is tremendously overrated.
And even more easily better than Larry Bird.
Yeah, okay, I don't know. Okay, I don't think people understand this, but Paul Pierce made he never made All NBA first team, and he made him and Isaiah Thomas made the same number of all NBA second teams in like Celtics, like Isaiah Thomas in the 4 or 3 years that he was there, made the same number of all NBA second teams that Paul Pierce did his whole career with the Celtics. So no, Paul Pierce is not that good.
Yeah, and this
like,
is
he made a bunch of All-Star teams, but no, he really wasn't that good.
yeah, and this is 5'9" Isaiah Thomas that we're talking about here. We're not even talking about the Pistons Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, it's not even like I mean, Paul Pierce is just tremendously overrated. I don't understand why everyone has such a bright spot for him. Like I get it, yeah, he got stabbed 12 times or however many times, and then he showed up and played 82 games the next season. Yes, I get it, but I mean, I don't know how many all defensive teams he made, but I don't imagine him being that good of a defender. He was probably very similar to Carmelo Anthony, who I mean, Carmelo Anthony very good, but I probably view the two of those players are probably about the same level. So yeah, Jason Tatum, and I really think his competition is going to be with Larry Bird because. Obviously, you'll have people who say Bill Russell, Kevin McHale, whatever, but I mean, those guys are ancient. And
yeah,
Kevin McHale, Kevin McHale's not ancient, but he'll be better than Kevin McHale. And Bill Russell, essentially, is who I mean is ancient because, I mean, yeah, we get it, 11 rings, but there are only 8 teams, yada, 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 yada. So, I mean, it'll be between Larry Bird and Jason Tatum. I do for sure. I think he's going to be the best player on this team. I think he's going to be better than Kyrie. I think he has more superstar potential than Jaylen Brown. Maybe Jaylen Brown can be the player who's about as good as Paul Pierce with the two-way edge to him. Kyrie Irving can be about as good as, I don't know, someone. But Jason Tatum was extremely impressive. It'll be really cool to see some battles between him and Ben Simmons in the future in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how well the Celtics team progresses in the future. And just to address one last point, that's a really significant fact that LeBron has scored more points in an NBA postseason than Michael Jordan ever did. Because the argument for Michael Jordan is always, oh, he scored more points as well. Obviously, 6 for 6 is bigger, but that's like the big statistical one is that he's a better scorer. So if LeBron scored more than him, and I checked, Michael Jordan's when he did that, it was in a 19-game postseason to that point, and LeBron has done that in 18 games thus far. So he did it in one less game, and he actually did it in fewer minutes. I checked, and Michael Jordan had 782 minutes in, I forget exactly what postseason it was. I think it was 96, but I'm not really sure. And LeBron's had like 740, which, again, is incredible.
Because mentioned, LeBron's probably done it at a more efficient clip from both the field and from the three-point line. So, yeah.
Yep. So
all LeBron haters are going to have to go to the free throw shooting argument. Their favorite one.
Yeah, and the one that only gets more and more invalidated every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I suppose we can talk about what the Celtics need to do in free agency in the offseason. They might be one of the more interesting ones to talk about because they have so many pieces that are either up in the air or like the team shouldn't really be 100% sure on what they should do with them. So for me, I think the big three players that they have to think about for the upcoming free agency, aside from obviously getting another player or getting LeBron or something, is they need to figure out what to do with Terry Rozier, Kyrie Irving, and Gordon Hayward.
Yep, I agree.
So what do you think they should do with each of those players?
I think you re-sign Kyrie Irving to an extension. I think he should be a point guard of the future. He's obviously extremely dynamic, best finisher with either hand at the rim, the best ball handler, crazy isolation player, very clutch. Very sad that he left LeBron still. You should trade Terry Rozier because he's a replacement level point guard who's just elevated by Brad Stevens' system. He's not the most talented player in the world. He's not a good defender. So, you might be able to get some really good stuff for him because people will probably think that he's actually better than he is. Because, obviously you have the dumb front offices out there who are like, oh, wow, look, stats. Oh, game winner one time. Oh, God, game time shot. Oh, my God, we have to trade for him. So he'll probably end up going somewhere, making some money, get rid of him. And then I think you should trade Gordon Hayward as well because while Gordon Hayward would be really cool to have in a small ball lineup situation against Golden State where you could have Kyrie, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, and then Al Horford, while that lineup is extremely interesting, I just don't think that the salary thing is going to – actually, maybe you could try it for 1 year while you still have Brown and Tatum under contract. But, you never know. maybe if New Orleans, for whatever reason, finally decides that AD should be out of there, then I don't know. Maybe they can send a package with some draft pick, the next year's 2019 Lakers pick or whatever it is, plus Gordon Hayward, plus Terry Rozier. Maybe they can do all that and send that to New Orleans for Anthony Davis, and then whatever. Obviously, you would do a deal like that. But if they have to trade Gordon Hayward this offseason, I think they should go ahead and do it and just try and get either some good bench pieces and some draft picks for him, because you really don't need him at this point. Like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, in my opinion, is already better than Gordon Hayward. I'm not exaggerating. Gordon Hayward's not a good defender, not a good playmaker, not a good rebounder, and people overhype him a lot because last year he was an all-star, but he also only averaged 20 points per game and 5 rebounds. So I don't know why people think that he's some savior. Also, I hate the argument that if Gordon Hayward had played in the playoffs this year or had played this season at all, that the Celtics would have made the finals, because if Gordon Hayward had played this year, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown wouldn't be nearly as good as they are right now.
Yep.
His injury is the only reason that they were allowed to develop into what they are. So people need to stop saying all this stuff about, oh, no Kyrie, no Hayward. Yeah, no Kyrie is fine, but don't say anything about no Hayward, because if you had Hayward and if you had Kyrie, Hayward, and you were bringing Jaylen Brown off the bench, and Jason Tatum wouldn't develop at all. You wouldn't win 55 games. Your defensive structure wouldn't be the same. Your players wouldn't be as engaged, wouldn't be as motivated, all that stuff. You have a lot of issues with that. So I think you need to offload Rozier. And then I'm not sure when Jaylen Brown needs an extension, because he was drafted in 2016. So I think you offer the extension after the third year. So this year would be his third year. So I guess you can keep Hayward for 1 year, see how it goes, test out that small ball lineup. And then if that doesn't work out well, then you can try and trade him in the 2019 offseason. But so far, yeah, I think I would keep Hayward for just 1 year just to see what you can do, because obviously it's not like any of your stars are really in danger of getting super old, except Al Horford. But, I mean, he's not really going to be a part of the long-term plans anyway. He's just kind of there. They're not going to be predicating any decisions on whether or not Al Horford is in his prime, because I think his game will age fine. I don't think that he's going to be one of those players who's crippled by waning athleticism or anything, seeing as he's really low to the ground anyway. And he's more of a skill-based player than he is an athletic-based player. So I think you should keep Hayward for this year, but I do think you should trade Rozier, because then, like, next year you're going to have to pay Kyrie, Rozier, Hayward. It's just a lot to deal with next year. Or not Hayward, or Brown. Or, I just think you get rid of Rozier, maybe get another backup point guard. Maybe you can send him to Utah. Good backup point guard.
Do it.
And then maybe get a draft pick or, whatever you need. Another wing defender, since Brad Stevens is really into that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think you really only have to get rid of Rozier, and then eventually you have to get rid of Hayward, because the reason I wouldn't say get rid of Hayward immediately is because, I mean, you signed him to a $170 million contract. It would kind of be a shame if you traded him before he even played a full game as a Celtic. Like, it'd be kind of one of the weirdest situations in history. And, I mean, also, poor guy. Like, he wanted to come play for Brad Stevens, so I think he should at least get, one season opportunity to see what he can do. And then, obviously, if they win a championship, then they're going to be, wanting to re-sign their core and all that. But, you'll see. I think it could be a cool thing if you have 3 small forward/shooting guards on the floor along with a point guard in the center. It can be really cool. They probably have the most formidable small ball lineup in the league, because every single one of those guys can shoot a 3, go off the dribble, score at the basket, make a pass, rebound, all that kind of stuff. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, and I'm so disappointed that I missed an opportunity to describe this as Kiss, Marry, Kill. I completely blew that one, guys. I'm sorry. Oh, that would have been so good. Okay. Well, at least I realized it. And yeah, I keep getting preoccupied, to be honest, on the idea of DeMarcus Cousins ending up with the Celtics. I don't know why, but it just seems like it's such a good match. So
yeah, that actually does make sense. I don't know where you'd play him, though. You'd probably have to play Al Horford at the 4.
Yeah, exactly. Put him at the power forward, and then, I think it would be really interesting, and I agree with you. I think they have to trade Terry Rozier. I would love to see them trade Kyrie Irving and just see how much you can get for him, because I don't think they gain a terribly large amount from having Kyrie
Yeah,
over.
you're right. I mean, because Rozier basically produced what Kyrie would have given. I mean, close to what Kyrie would have given you.
Yeah.
Kyrie's value would obviously be higher, so maybe you can roll with Rozier as your starting point guard and flip Kyrie for assets. But, I mean, to me at this point, it's just like, I mean, what more can you get? Like, it's not like you're going to be able to trade someone like him for just pieces that'll make your bench better. Like, ultimately, you're going to have to – also, they have to make a decision about Marcus Smart as well, because apparently he's unhappy with his salary. So, I mean, maybe you can do a package or something. But I would at this point I don't really know. I don't know what else they would want. I mean, unless he wants to kind of do a similar thing and just hold on to draft picks in the future.
I mean, that
Um,
wouldn't be a bad idea.
yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea because then I guess once this system fails or whatever, he can just replicate it and do it again and keep winning championships. But yeah, it'd be cool to see what he could get for Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, but there's no way Boston will do it because it would look like a PR nightmare if they came into next season and Terry Rozier sucked and then Kyrie Irving was doing great on some other team.
All you can do is sign and trade for Kyrie and LeBron.
Kyrie, oh, that'd be great. Yeah,
LeBron should go there though. I mean, that's actually a really good option, but obviously the whole Kyrie situation would never work out. But I mean, yeah.
yeah, that'd be really interesting if they both ended up there. Obviously, I don't want that because I want to see the Celtics suffer as much as possible. But you know, and actually, I forgot to mention this, but the referee, people that I was watching the games with, they were all Celtics fans. So
Yeah,
it was like the entire time I was just the only person rooting for the Cavs, and then the Celtics lost, and I got some angry looks as I was walking out. So yeah. So I suppose I'm indebted to LeBron for his performance then. But yeah, that's about all we got for the Celtics. So Celtics, we say goodbye to you and we move on to our evaluation of the upcoming NBA Finals, as people are calling it. The Actually, I don't know what people are calling it. What are people calling this NBA Finals?
Part 4, episode 4.
Oh, okay, episode 4, A New Hope, or
Yeah,
I don't know.
honestly.
Maybe the Empire Strikes Back, I guess. But yeah, this is going to be obviously the fourth time that the Warriors and Cavs are facing each other in the finals. Speaks more to LeBron James's dominance more than anything. But nevertheless, we have to talk about the NBA Finals, even though I think we're both pretty sure that it's going to end either in a sweep or a 5-game series. So
Yeah.
to go for our standard procedure, we're going to go for the matchups, the bench, the coach, what the favorite needs to do to win, what the underdog needs to do to win, what we're most excited to see, who we want to see win, and then our prediction. So I think we can blast through the matchups except for the positions that really matter. I don't think there's any doubt for what we expect out of point guard for Steph Curry versus George Hill, or shooting guard Klay Thompson versus Kyle Korver, because Kyle Korver sucks at defense. But I think small forward, power forward, and center are all interesting. So do you want to just skip to those?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see anything we would say about either of those two positions that we haven't already said. So for small forward, we have Andre Iguodala versus Jeff Green. And I think this one's really interesting because they're both very similar players, and we're not big fans of Andre Iguodala, so it seems like it's almost a toss-up.
Yeah, see, it is. It's very close from a talent perspective, like when you're just evaluating the two of them against one another. But simply because Jeff Green is inconsistent and he's really not, he's not like, I don't know how to say it. Like it's not like he's bad at something. It's not like he's bad, but it's like he's just not the right fit, I guess, for playing with LeBron, kind of, because his body type and like his play style and his athleticism are kind of what LeBron was before he was, obviously what he is now. But like he's kind of a raw athlete who's just not very skilled per se. Like he's not a great shooter. He's kind of more just a rugged defensive guy. Whereas I think Andre Iguodala's basketball IQ is much higher, and simply because Andre Iguodala has more experience playing with his teammates and playing with, his small ball death lineup or whatever it is, and the fact that he has a Finals MVP and the fact that he does kind of know LeBron's defensive like quirks, and he can't stop LeBron obviously, but he does sort of know LeBron to the degree where he can bother him. Obviously, he held him to 40% shooting in the 2015 NBA Finals. Then he played good roaming defense on him in the 2016 Finals, and LeBron got him back for all that with the block. And then in 2017, he made a game-saving play where he held LeBron the ball down when LeBron was trying to shoot a corner three to win the game in Game 3 and stuff like that. So just for the series, I give Andre Iguodala the advantage. But as an individual player, I would give Jeff Green the advantage since he's younger, more athletic, can probably do more all around in the court. But I just think Andre Iguodala's his IQ, experience, and how well he fits with his team, and the fact that he's hidden by the fact that he plays with 4 All-Stars will end up showing. So I think that he'll be able to shine more in this series because Jeff Green is going to be viewed in this series as a second or third option, whereas Andre Iguodala is only viewed as a fifth option. So I expect Iguodala to have a better series, even though he's not playing in Game 1. He's been ruled out for Game 1.
Oh, really? I didn't see that. Okay, well, yeah, I agree. Iguodala is definitely going to have a better series, and yeah, I think Jeff Green is a better player. Do you think that Jeff Green would do better than Andre Iguodala if he was on the Warriors, or do you think his play style doesn't gel with him?
I don't think he would because I don't. First and foremost, Andre Iguodala really evolved as a shooter coming to Golden State and kind of being their best six man, and kind of their interchangeable, like their favorite puzzle piece, I guess. Like he's kind of like the guy that you stick into any lineup and he kind of makes it work. He's like their glue guy. I just don't think Jeff Green has a high enough. I don't want to say that he has a low IQ, but like he just doesn't. He doesn't exude that sort of like floor general mentality of like making the right pass, getting this guy open. Making the correct defensive rotation. It's just kind of like when it comes down to Jeff Green is you love the death out of him when he or you love him to death when he like you love him to death when he's finally draining some threes and then he actually gives you a decent scoring night. But I mean when his shot's not falling and all he can do is make plays at the rim, he's really not that useful because even though he's a good individual defender, he's not the best team defender.
Yeah, and
So I don't think he would do better in Golden State actually. I think Golden State would definitely utilize him very well because he is athletic and he's someone that they could play in a small ball lineup. But I just think Andre Iguodala, because of how familiar he is with the team, maybe if Jeff Green had been there since 2015, then yeah, we'd be talking about something different. But I think if you switch them one for one, I think Cleveland would get better. I think Golden State would get worse.
yeah, I'm looking at Iguodala's contract right now. Oh, I was
Oh,
saying,
yeah. Durant had to take less money for them to re-sign him.
yeah, for some reason I thought he was going to be a free agent after this year, but that's obviously not true. Do you think he
That's-
deserves 15? Do you think he deserves 16 million a year like he's getting?
No, no, he doesn't.
Yeah.
I think he deserves probably close to 12. But they had to, I guess, just because he was incremental in the 3 trips to the finals as a Finals MVP, and he's very important to the locker room and I guess their team camaraderie. He really helped Kevin Durant transition and stuff like that. They really love him. So, and he's a really good friend of Steph Curry. So I feel like the reason for him getting that contract has a lot more to do with his presence in the locker room and stuff than his production on the court. Similarly to J.R. Smith and Tristan Thompson 2 years ago.
Yep, that's.
Except Iguodala is worth it because he's actually he's a very good contributor when he's in there. Like he really does make big plays and he hits big shots sometimes and he makes good defensive rotations and everything like that. He really is a good glue guy for them. He's another playmaker for them. You have Steph. He's their fourth playmaker. You've got Draymond, Steph, Durant, and him, who can all get people open. Klay Thompson's really the only guy who doesn't make plays for other people in that lineup. So yeah.
Okay, that pretty much goes for the small forward position. Then we have the eternal debate, it seems. Not the eternal debate, that's Michael Jordan versus him. But the new age debate for best small forward in the NBA. I had both my power forward because both teams are running pretty small. I have Kevin Durant versus LeBron James. Obviously, we're both going to go with LeBron James, but I guess we can use this opportunity to slam Kevin Durant again for why he's not better than LeBron James and how most people are wrong about him.
Yeah, Kevin Durant is an excellent scorer, but he can't control the pace of the game. He's a glorified help defender. He's not a great playmaker. I don't even know if I've already said that. He's thin. He's frail. His confidence in the fourth quarter gets shattered easily. He doesn't have a killer instinct of taking over games. I know everyone loves to use that against LeBron, but Kevin Durant's worse. He passed up multiple opportunities to win the game. He made a pass to Klay Thompson when he was being double teamed at the end of a game. He could have just easily shot in a 17-footer over PJ Tucker, who's, I guess, 7 inches shorter than him. Kevin Durant is not equipped of taking games over in the fourth quarter, at least not this year. I think last finals was an outlier for him. He had a pretty good he had a great series last year, not to take anything away from him. He shot terrifically last series, but at the end of the day, he's a shooter, which means that his shot can come and go. Like I said earlier, he has the most missed shots in a playoff game in NBA history, tied with Michael Jordan. I think he went 7 of 33, and he's just he's a one-dimensional player. He really doesn't. If he's scoring, then he's scoring, but he's not a valuable player. Golden State would be just fine if they had another player who could average 25 points per game. They'd be no different. They'd be no lesser, no more of a threat. I'm not even joking. You could replace Kevin Durant with 2013 Carmelo Anthony, and the Warriors would be just as good. I don't know about that because Melo is kind of a ball hog, but you know what I mean. You can replace him with James Harden averaging 26 and be the same thing. You could replace him with LeBron as a scorer and get the same thing. You could replace him with, Chris Middleton, give him more opportunities and you get the same thing. He's one of the most easily replaceable players in the NBA, given what he provides to this team. He's really not all that important to the team. The team plays much better offensively when he's not on the court. He's a ball stopper. he has some ball hogging tendencies. He's not a leader. He doesn't put teammates in the right position to win games. He's never set up a teammate for a wide open shot to win the game. He runs from the ball in the fourth quarter, especially this last series. He had like under 10 fourth quarter points in the series in the last round, and he's terrific. Don't get me wrong; he's the second best player in the world, but the gap between him and LeBron is so great that I hate when people even try and because whatever. Kevin Durant's defensive numbers are obviously better than LeBron's, but for all the idiots who don't understand, it's literally only because he's on a much better defensive team. All 5 of the Golden State Warriors' death lineup are in the top 12 in defensive rating in the playoffs. So it's just about team defense and the fact that your individual defensive efficiency is going to be higher when you play on a smarter defensive team with good defensive schemes. If you look at the Cavs 5, the fact that LeBron is like 40th or whatever is a miracle, given that all of his teammates are probably in the low 200s or something. So, I don't want to hear that argument that he's a better defender, because when LeBron's engaged and actually exerts himself defensively, he's a better shot blocker, he's a better rim protector. Him and Kristaps Porzingis were the only 2 players this season to hold opponents at the rim under 50% shooting, 3 feet from the basket. He's an excellent rim protector still at this age. He's a good perimeter defender because he's stronger. He's better at getting in the passing lanes. So he's not better defensively. I don't know why people make that argument consistently, and he's never been either. I mean, Kevin Durant still has yet to make an all-defensive team, and he's entering the 12th season of his career next year. LeBron James has made 6 all-defensive teams, and he should have been the Defensive Player of the Year once. LeBron James is a better passer, he's a better rebounder, and he's a more efficient scorer. People don't understand this, but when Kevin Durant is playing without Russell Westbrook or Steph Curry, he's only a 45% shooter from the field, whereas with them, he's around 52 to 53. Or 51 to 53, somewhere in that range. His 3-point shooting also without Russell Westbrook and Steph Curry is only about 35 to 36, not even close to his 38, 39. I guess it doesn't really sound like that big of a drop off, but if you go from being basically a 50% shooter from the field and a 39% shooter from 3 versus 45% from the field and 35% from 3, you're really not as efficient of a scorer. Still a great scorer, puts the ball in the basket. LeBron James and him have the same career averages from the field. No, not career averages from the field. Career average from a scoring perspective, I think Kevin Durant is 27.2 and LeBron is 27.1. LeBron generates more points for his team. He literally does more of everything, and he's better at everything except 3-point shooting and free throw shooting. It's really not a debate. Just because you're better at 2 things doesn't make you a better player. Just because you play on a better team doesn't make you a better player. And it's essentially the same reason why Michael Jordan's not better than LeBron. It's the same reason why no one else is better than LeBron, because nobody else has had nearly as much help as LeBron has had. And I'll get into this later when I do the Scottie Pippen discussion. But something that people don't understand is LeBron James has won. He's never played with another player who finished top 5 in MVP voting other than Dwayne Wade. And that only happened one time. He's never played with a player who's been on the first team All-NBA while he's played with them. He's never been with a player who's made second team All-NBA while playing with him, and he's never had a teammate make any all-defensive team while playing with him. He's never played with another player who's won an MVP other than Shaquille O'Neal, who obviously played with him when he was not even close to what he was before. So the fact that LeBron James is able to carry such lesser talent, if you put Kevin Durant on this team, they probably would have been like the 7th or 6th seed in the East, and they probably would have lost in the first or second round. Even NBA players acknowledge this. Kyle Kuzma was on a radio show a few weeks ago, or last week or 2 weeks ago, saying something that if you switch teams, if you put LeBron on the Warriors and you put Kevin Durant on Cleveland, there's no way Cleveland wins 50 games. There's no way that Cleveland makes it to the finals. Kevin Durant doesn't elevate his teammates, and it's just not close. LeBron is better, and if you don't think so, just because you're a prisoner of the moment and the fact that Kevin Durant hit 1 shot on LeBron James last year in the NBA Finals, then you're an idiot, because I don't know if I've explained this on this podcast before, but Kevin Durant, when he's isolated on the left wing, he's either 1 dribble away from a pull-up 3, or he's two dribbles away from an easy look at the rim. So I believe, and certainly many others believe, there have been a few coaches that have said this on radio shows, and some people who have said this, in the NBA community as well, that LeBron James intentionally cut Kevin Durant off after 1 dribble to force him into taking a 3, because he knew that if he let him take 2 dribbles, then he would be forced to contest his shot at the rim, which is obviously going to be a higher percentage shot and a more efficient shot for Kevin Durant to take. And obviously, as a defender, you want the person you're defending to take the least efficient shot possible. That's what LeBron did. Kevin Durant just happened to hit it. It's no indictment on LeBron. It's just something that Kevin Durant did, and he happened to do it at an important time of the game. But People don't understand that if LeBron James had Kyle Korver hit that 1-3, then we're talking about a completely different NBA Finals last year. We're probably 2-2 heading back to Golden State for Game 5. And it's just a different thing. So, and for anyone criticizing LeBron for not taking that shot and passing it up to Kyle Korver, that is it's the highest efficiency shot that they could have generated in the NBA all season that year. Kyle Korver wide open for a left open corner three. I don't want to hear any debate about it. LeBron's better at everything except 3-point shooting and free throw shooting. He's more efficient, better score, or not better scorer, but just as good of a scorer while being a more efficient scorer. He's a better defender, like I've detailed, holds opponents to a better field goal percentage all around. And this goes for Western Conference opponents in the regular season as well. This isn't just something from these playoffs for all the people who are going to say, oh, LeBron has better numbers because he plays against weaker competition. That's just not true. And for everyone saying that Kevin Durant dominated LeBron James in the NBA Finals last year, that's just not true because Kevin Durant averaged 35 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, whereas LeBron James averaged 34 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. And he also shot better from the field. So that's that. LeBron James is better.
And how? Okay, if I ever make that highlight reel that I keep thinking about doing for our NBA coverage, just so people don't have to listen to 24 hours, literally 24 hours or more of our coverage to get an idea of how the NBA is going this year. That's going on it, because if there's one comparison that we always have to address, aside from Michael Jordan, obviously, it's LeBron James versus Kevin Durant, because it just doesn't make sense that people have that belief. If anyone wants to argue that free point percentage and just volume scoring are more important than any other stats when you're evaluating players, well, I'm sorry, but you're missing so much of the bigger picture. So, I don't even trust your opinion on the NBA. If you want to argue who's the better shooter, you can say Kevin Durant maybe, but LeBron James is better at the rim. He's better in a way. He was better on super long distance shots. He was better from 40 feet out than anyone in the league this year. So you can't even say that he's not better at that. If you want to say that Kevin Durant's better in isolation, you even have an iffy case because LeBron James is awesome at driving to the rim. So there just is not much of a
better player in the post. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there just isn't any legs to stand on with that debate, and that's why we keep addressing it. We're trying to stamp it into the ground because we don't understand why it exists. So,
also better percentage shooter in the clutch. And the other thing that I don't understand about this is nobody was even making a case for Kevin Durant to be the best player in the world. In that, when he was up 3-1 on Golden State, nobody said anything about, oh, Kevin Durant's the best player. Nobody. It's just as soon as he won the championship against LeBron, it's like, oh my God, he beat LeBron and he has 3 Hall of Famers on his team other than him. He must be better than LeBron because he hit one shot in his face. It's idiocy. It's stupid. I mean, Kevin Durant has a lot of underlying issues with multiple things in his game. He has multiple weaknesses. He has this one tendency where he consistently gets caught up in between the 3-point line and the rim. And he's fixed this since he's come to Golden State, but nobody even criticized him for this. He would constantly get stuck in this situation. And because he didn't have a reliable post fadeaway, he would constantly turn it over. That Dallas exploited that in the series in 2016, and Golden State exploited that in 2016 as well when they beat them coming back down 3-1. But, I mean, Kevin Durant has multiple weaknesses as a player that just never get addressed. I mean, he's still never going to be the playmaker that LeBron is. He's never going to make as many all-defensive teams as LeBron. He's never going to make as many all-NBA teams as LeBron. He's never going to win as many MVPs as LeBron. I mean, yes, he might win as many championships, but, I mean, like we've said multiple times, championships are not a measure of how good of an individual player you are. And also, let's not forget that he had to join a 73-win team in order to win a championship, and they needed to have the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, the reigning unanimous MVP, a former MVP, and the 2 best shooters of all time in order to beat a 32-year-old LeBron James in the NBA Finals. That is never going to go away.
Yep, and on top of all that, he's the biggest diva because he instituted this superstar of today. No, just kidding. That's a joke. Anybody?
He also said this was really kind of annoying that he said this. He said that Clint Capella has a very easy job, and I just don't appreciate you saying that somebody else's job is easy when you literally took the easiest possible way out to win an NBA championship. You could have went to the Spurs and been competitive with Golden State. You could have went to the Eastern Conference and then maybe actually faced LeBron to establish yourself as the best player. And just a side note, because I was thinking about this the other day, Everybody constantly hates on LeBron because he won't play in the Western Conference, or that, he's dominant. Not that he won't play there, but that he dominates the Eastern Conference and it's a weaker conference. If the East is so weak, then why don't players from the Western Conference go to the Eastern Conference to play there? Oh, that's right. It's because they don't want to have to go through LeBron James on their way to the NBA Finals. Why doesn't anybody ever bring that up? It's the same. The West is so stacked because people avoid LeBron. That's been, I don't think people get that. nobody wants to face LeBron James in an earlier round of the playoffs because he's going to be more well rested. He's going to be playing better, more efficient, better. Like, you don't want to have to play LeBron James in a 4 out of 7 game series unless you absolutely have to, which is, I just don't like. Oh God, Gordon Hayward is like the only player who's went west to east, and the only reason he probably did that was because he saw a potential dynasty with all the draft picks that Danny Ainge had, and the fact that they had Isaiah Thomas there at the time and all that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, people need to bring that up as a possibility as well.
Yeah, no
that
kidding.
just don't want to face LeBron in the playoffs, or that not that they don't want to face him, but like that's obviously something you consider. Like, I mean, if the East is so weak, then just go to the East. But no, you can't go to the East because you'll have to play LeBron.
Yep.
Kevin Durant could have went so many more places. I mean, whatever. Like he could have went to Washington, he could have went to Boston, he could have went to San Antonio, he could have stayed in Oklahoma City, he could have went to Houston. Like, I mean, yeah, but whatever.
Yeah, and I don't blame him for the whole superstar thing. That was a joke. I don't even blame KG for it because like KG was on a horrible Timberwolves teams for so many years. Like it's not like KD's situation where he's on really good Thunder teams. KG was having to put up with Andre Karolinko and just I can't even think of any other players on that team. It was so bad. And
I don't even remember any of those teams, but
you're a Timberwolves fan.
Yeah, I know. That's the worst part about it. I know Kevin Garnett. He's one of the most unfortunate players ever. I mean, if he had a good supporting basically what LeBron dealt with his first 7 years in Cleveland is what Kevin Garnett dealt with his entire career, aside from maybe 3 years. So, I mean, that's a tragic shame. But as far as Durant, I mean, yeah, he had Russell Westbrook, and I get it. People love to hate on Russell Westbrook, but the reason that they lost the series against Golden State in 2016 was Kevin Durant's fault. I don't care what you say. It was a 5-point game with 5 minutes left. If you're the second best player in the world, or when some people would argue now the best player in the world, then you should take that series over. You should finally make some shots and don't join the team that beat you after. I mean, it's fine that he went to go play with Golden State. Okay, like it's okay. Obviously, I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it. But it's regardless of whether or not I don't like it, it's still okay that he did it. But if you're going to do it, then do not diminish what other people in the NBA are doing because you literally took the easiest path possible to winning an NBA championship. Yeah. Or I mean, honestly, I think it would have been cooler if he wouldn't go play with LeBron. I would be fine with that. But you don't say the Clint Capella job is easy when you're literally the most replaceable star player in the NBA. He's the least valuable superstar in the NBA. If you take James Harden off the Rockets, Kevin Durant off the Warriors, if you take LeBron off the Cavs, if you take if you take Brad Stevens away from Boston, if you take DeMar DeRozan away from Toronto, take all the superstars away from their team, Golden State completely murders the rest of the league. Not even close.
Yep, that's pretty accurate. I like the Brad Stevens throw out there.
Yeah, I was thinking Kyrie Irving, but then I realized they didn't have Kyrie, and so then I realized, oh yeah, Brad Stevens is actually the superstar. So yeah.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so that wraps up our extensive discussion on the power forward in matchup. Obviously, going to LeBron. So then we have center, which is Draymond Green versus Kevin Love. Now, if you want to say like prototypical center who's better, it's Draymond Green. I'm just kidding. It's Draymond Green no matter how you look at it. And Kevin Love, sure, he's good. If even that, like he's a borderline All-Stars some year.
He wouldn't All-Star if he was in the Western Conference.
No, he wouldn't.
It's not even close. This man is averaging 14. He's averaging actually 13.9 points per game in the playoffs. I'm just rounding up to 14 to be nice. He's shooting 38% from the field and like 34% from three. It's unacceptable. He's not playing well. He is leading the playoffs in rebounding, but they're empty rebounds because once he gets the rebound, he's just chucking it forward to LeBron and hoping that LeBron does something fantastic with it. Except for that one play where LeBron caught it over 2 Celtics defenders. That was actually really cool. But I heard people saying that those Celtics got Randy Mossed, which was kind of funny. But anyways, yeah, Kevin Love is disappointing, and he's only averaging 8 points per game against the Warriors in the past 2 finals, so I'm not expecting anything from him. Draymond Green, however, is averaging close to a triple-double with 11, 12, and 8, playing fantastic, leading their team in every statistical category except scoring, like I mentioned, leading in the rebounding, assists, steals, blocks. And yeah, if he doesn't play in this series, then Cleveland has a better chance to win. He's extremely valuable, in my opinion, considering he's leading the team in literally everything except points. He's probably their second most valuable player, other than Steph, in these playoffs, and going to be in this series. So it goes to Draymond. I mean, he's a much better and that's not even to mention what he does defensively in terms of their help defense and their rotations and keeping everyone there and protecting the rim and all that stuff. he's going to outplay Draymond Green yet again, or he's going to outplay Kevin Love yet again, and it's not even going to be close. It's going to look like Draymond Green is a superstar and Kevin Love is just some, replacement player, given how the matchup is going to go. I mean, Kevin Love is going to be looking as good as Kelly Olynyk in the finals.
Yep, and that's pretty much all there is to say on this. It's not that close. Draymond Green is better in actually almost every way. Kevin Love at this point, he's not even that great of a 3-point shooter. Like Draymond Green shoots like 30%. I'd be curious to see what Kevin Love's averages are for this playoffs. So actually, I'm going to look him up. But Draymond Green is better at rebounding, which is amazing because Kevin Love is like 4 inches taller than him. Oh no, he's not. Forget it. He's actually 6'10", but he's 2 inches taller than him. And then I don't know what his reach is. I imagine Draymond Green's is actually better, but shh, don't tell anyone. But yeah, Draymond Green is better at passing the ball. He's a better team defender. He's a better individual defender. He's better at locking down the post. He's better at moving out. He's better at switching. It's just every way you look at it. Draymond Green is better than Kevin Love. And just pulling up his free-point percentage this playoffs, he's at .346. And if I pull up Draymond Green and see how fast Basketball Reference can whisk me over there. Let's see. Okay, that was actually pretty quick. He's at 2.77. So, okay, Kevin Love, I can throw you a bone. You're better at shooting 3-pointers. But you're not playing in enough games to have it actually matter. So, we'll see how many games you actually play in the NBA Finals with your concussion.
Yep.
And I'll just say, NBA, I'm proud of you for actually taking concussions seriously. Because I could easily imagine a scenario where the NFL, some player comes out for a concussion and then goes back in because, it's the Super Bowl. No, screw that. You're not going to bash someone's brains in just because it's some big game. You don't sacrifice someone's longevity just because it's a big sporting event. That's absolutely insane. That you would literally take years off of someone's life for a sporting event. So
yeah, I saw a very interesting meme. Actually, it was like the NFL when a player gets concussion and has CTE issues and all that, versus when a player kneels for the national anthem, and it was like a SpongeBob looking all concerned when it was the national anthem, but not caring at all when it was a CTE issue.
Yep,
it's pretty accurate.
Sounds about right. Okay.
Yeah.
So then I guess we can move on to the bench. So for the Warriors, their bench is JaVale McGee, Sean Livingston, Quinn Cook, David West, Kevon Looney, Nick Young, Damian Jones, Zaza Pachulia, and Jordan Bell. And then for the Cavaliers, it's Larry Nance Jr., J.R. Smith, Rodney Hood, Jose Calderon, Jordan Clarkson, Tristan Thompson, Cedi Osman, and Ante Zizic. So this one's not really any competition either. It's a little bit close just because the Warriors really don't have that incredible of a bench, but the Cavs don't either.
Yeah, the Cavs players are unplayable. Larry Nance has been ineffective since that really good 6-game stretch that he had in the regular season. Jordan Clarkson's completely unplayable. His favorite possession, like I've said repeatedly over the last few podcasts, is to dribble the ball 8 or 9 times and then shoot a contested jump shot. It's horrible. He's a shot clock killer, ball stopper, not good at anything. I mean, his per 36-minute averages are pretty good, like 20 points per game per 36 minutes. But, I mean, his efficiency is horrendous. He takes horrible shots. Larry Nance has good energy, but just not very skilled at all. Rodney Hood, I don't know what the hell happened to him. He was supposed to be the 3rd best player on this team, and he's just completely awful, fell out of rotation because he refused to go in during garbage time of Game 7. Ever since he's been, ousted from the starting lineup, which, I mean, I really think that they should try and fix that because I think Rodney Hood probably does have maybe 1 or 2 good games left in him. I think he can maybe help contribute, maybe give you 15 in one night and maybe finally make some shots because, I mean, he's probably the 3rd most gifted player. He's probably, the 3rd most physically gifted player on Cleveland. There's LeBron and then Jeff Green, and then I would say him. He's very long. He's athletic. He should be a good defender, but he's not. He has been a good shooter, but for some reason he hasn't been. And he's no good. Jose Calderon is too old. Ante Zizic isn't in the rotation because he's not very talented. Cedi Osman has also been out of the rotation because while he plays with energy, he's really not that talented. J.R. Smith, inconsistent as all hell. Whereas the Warriors bench plays fluidly, and they just have it together defensively. They know the rotations. They're smarter. They work better with their team. So the Warriors bench is going to outplay the Cavs bench yet again, and it's going to be pretty sad because last year in the NBA Finals in 2017, the Cavs actually led the Warriors in point differential when LeBron James was on the court. It's just that when LeBron James was off the court, they were like a minus 30 or something, so they got completely killed when he wasn't playing. But when he was playing, they were actually a plus 8 for the whole series. So If somehow you can make LeBron James play at a perfect level, exactly how he plays with all energy for 48 minutes a night, then you never know. Maybe Cleveland could actually win in the finals with a point spread of like +2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. But that's not physically possible. So unfortunately, it's not going to happen. And Cleveland's bench is going to underperform. And this is the roster that's probably going to be the 14th seed in the East next year.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, I would agree
In
with that.
tight competition with Orlando.
Yeah, poor Steve Clifford. I don't know why he accepted that job. I guess he didn't have any better options. But yeah, it's poor guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the coaching discussion, we have Steve Kerr versus Tyronn Lue. This one isn't much of a competition, even though we're not a fan of either of these coaches. We still think Steve Kerr is like a top 10 coach, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's versus someone that we definitely think is a bottom 10 coach in Tyronn Lue. We'd probably take Steve Clifford over Tyronn Lue, actually. And
Yep, for sure.
And yeah, like there's not that much that needs to be said here. Maybe Tyronn Lue pulls out another rabbit out of a hat and has a performance like he did in 2016, but that's not going to happen. So what the favorite needs to do in this series, don't let LeBron get 60 points per game in the series. That's pretty much it. Just don't let that happen, and you win. And then what the underdog needs to win, they have to have Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry get injured, and they still have to have LeBron play like a GOAT if they want any chance to win. And then for me, I'm most excited to see LeBron, obviously, why not? And then I want the Cavaliers to win because, I mean, well, what the hell, why not? Yeah, root for them, I guess. And then my prediction is Warriors in 4.
Yeah, so for me, what the Warriors need to do to win, just play not horrible. Have all of your starters average double digits.
Yeah, don't get caught in traffic. Let's go with that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, show up to the arena. Okay, you'll win. Okay, show up. And make sure that 3 of your 5 starters don't have 0 points. There you go. For the Cavs to win, realistically, LeBron, I'll read this first. Apparently, there was a Western Conference assistant coach who said that he won't be surprised. He said, in all sincerity, I won't be surprised if LeBron averages 50 points in this series. That is the type of respect he's getting around the league right now. That said, I still pick Golden State. So, yeah. I mean, he's going to need to average a 40-point triple-double. Kevin Love is going to need to average 25 or 26. George Hill is going to need to average 13 to 14 with like 6 assists. And you're going to need one more player after that averaging double digits. And then once you have that on the offensive end, you're going to need everybody to lock in defensively and play solid defense for at least 46 minutes every night in the series. That is the only way that Cleveland can win. And even if that is the case, they'll win in 7 games.
Yep.
However, for my prediction, I think Warriors in 5. Yeah. Warriors in 5. Because I just believe in LeBron James to the point where I feel like he can win at least 1 game in Cleveland. I think, at some point they'll have one good night and they'll just win. And, the Warriors get complacent and they haven't swept anyone this year. So, I think they'll drop at least 1 game.
Yeah, I hope that'll happen, but I'm just taking the aggressive pick because in all the first round series I was super waffly on my picks, and I was always predicting like 7 games or like 6 games or whatever, and then they would end in sweeps. And I'm like, oh, well, I wish I was more aggressive. So I'm being more aggressive here. But yeah, that'd be nice if LeBron could get a game at least to save face and do at least what the Spurs did. So yeah, but I figured out a better comparison than comparing this to the 2015 finals. So do you think it would be more or less difficult for LeBron to have come back from that 3-1 deficit in 2016 than to get this series to 7 games? I'm not even saying win it, just get it to 7 games.
Yes, I think it would be more difficult to get this series to 7 games than it was to come back down 3-1 from that series because, I mean, we praise LeBron so much, but I mean, we forget that Kyrie Irving did average 29 points per game in that series. He did have 41 points in Game 5, and then he went 19 for 24 from the field, and that's insane for a point guard to shoot 19 of 24 from the field, given the way that he plays. LeBron, there's probably going to be 1 game where another player has maximum of 2. There is a maximum of 2 games in this series in which another Cavs player will score 20 points. At best, Kevin Love will score 20 points twice. That's the best. Like that's the best that it can be. So as a result of that, I mean, there's just no way in my mind that this will go 7. If it somehow does go 7, and LeBron puts up that good of a fight against them, then it's just even more clear that he's the greatest player of all time. Because, I mean, even those 96 Bulls at the peak of their prime would probably not be able to take this team to 7 games. They would probably also lose the series in about 5 or 6 games. And that's not to disrespect that team, but it's just this is the most talented team ever, the best shooting team, not in terms of how many their percentage or whatever, but just in terms of how good each individual shooter is. They have 3 of the best shooters ever on their team, 2 of the 3 best, and then 3 of maybe the 10 best. And then you have a great coach. You have the coach with the greatest winning percentage of all time in the playoffs with a minimum of 75 games. His winning percentage is 73.7%. That's higher than Phil Jackson, Greg Popovich, all those other guys. Obviously, once he plays more games, we'll see. But as of right now, I mean, there's just no way. Ultimately the reason is LeBron doesn't have anyone on this roster even close to what Kyrie was. Because Kevin Love at best is probably going to average like 17 points per game in this series, and Kyrie already averaged 29 or 28 in that series. So it's just not. I don't think it's even a possibility that this series goes 7 games.
Yeah,
I mean, assuming LeBron has some maybe if LeBron legitimately averages a 50-point triple double, then they can win. They can't win, but they could get it to 6 games. I just don't think he can get it to 7 games.
Yeah, and I don't think that
you'd have to win 2 games to get it to 7. You'd have to survive the first 2 games at Oracle, which you'll probably lose both. Then you'll have to survive 2 more games in Cleveland, where Golden State has won multiple times. Then you'll have to survive a 3rd game in Oracle. Then you'll have to win again at home. So I mean, unless I just don't think that they can win all 3 at home to get it to 7. I just don't. I just think that Golden State is so used to playing there, to the point where their owner literally said, "I'm tired of playing Cleveland." So
that's great.
Golden State is the best team ever assembled, and if they can't win a road game, that's a huge indictment on every single one of their players.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'll be honest, I could see a scenario where the Warriors lose game 1 just because they, like everyone else, is just not taking this team seriously. But even that seems silly at this point.
They could have a horrible game in game 1 and still win by 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they did in game 1 against Houston. They really didn't play that well, but they won by 13.
Yeah, and it's just so... It's unfathomable, honestly, to imagine the Warriors to lose this series, and yeah, it seems a bit hopeless for the Cavs.
Unless you put in Kendrick Perkins and he pulls a Zaza Pachulia on both Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, because even if you lose, the only plausible way that Cleveland could lose this series, that Cleveland could win this series, is if they didn't have Steph Curry. Because the thing is, if they don't have Steph and they have to play all the Durant isolation stuff, that's basically then it's LeBron and Kevin Durant one-on-one, because Clay and Draymond aren't the same players without Steph. And LeBron I think he could win that series in 7. I'm not saying he would, because Klay Thompson is such a good shooter that he can still give you 30 in that. But, I mean, yeah.
And
that's the only plausible way that you could actually see this being even close to an even finals, is if Steph Curry just doesn't play.
Yeah, that would be an interesting series, actually. I still think the Warriors would win, but yeah, it'd be interesting at least.
And another thing, I heard someone, he's actually a pretty good, he's a LeBron supporter, and he said that if Kevin Durant was playing this series without Steph Curry going against LeBron, it would be a fight for who's the best player in the world. And that's so stupid to me, because that's, Durant still has 2 Hall of Famers. Klay Thompson is the 3rd or 2nd best shooter of all time, and Draymond Green is a perennial all-star who's won a Defensive Player of the Year and one of the best defensive forwards of all time. So, that's just dumb.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have anything else to say on that. It's just dumb. So, yep, that wraps up the preview of the NBA Finals. Obviously, the games are going to be spaced out by about 3 days each time. So, first game's going to be tomorrow on Thursday, and then Sunday, Tuesday. Oh, I just made an ass of myself. Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, and then, yeah, we'll see if it makes it past that. I don't think either of us expect that. So, yeah. that's pretty much all we got for the previews and the wrap ups. Personally, I'm pretty proud of ourselves. So we managed to do 15 playoff previews and stick to the format. That was pretty good.
Yeah, they were pretty good.
So just based on timing, I don't think we have time to do the All NBA projections. I know we love doing that, but I think we might have to push that to next time, just because we only have like 40 minutes right now, and I honestly I think we have to push the Hall of Fame or like past player discussion as well. Are you available for this weekend?
I am.
Okay,
Sure.
then actually that might be the best call to just record this weekend then, so we don't have to worry about time because you know me, I don't want to rush through my All NBA discussion.
For sure.
So yeah, I think that's what we'll do. We'll recap Game One for the next podcast. We'll talk about our All NBA teams, and we'll do the Hall of Fame thing. I keep calling it that. Do you have a better name for what you want to talk about with?
I don't know. I've been thinking about it. I don't know. I guess for now we can call it the Scottie Pippen discussion, since that's really what I want to lead with. I really want to hammer in how good he was.
Okay.
I really want to talk about him. But so yeah, for now I guess we can just call it that.
Okay, we'll call it Scottie Pippen et al. So yes, that's what we got for next time. So yeah, guys, thank you for listening. That was a lot of fun. We're wrapping up the playoffs now, so you can look forward to an eventful NBA offseason where we finally find out where all these free agents end up, and we get to see who's the NBA Finals winner. Maybe even we get to see what happens in the draft. Get to see the rest of the NBA awards get released. Unfortunately, we won't get to wait on the All NBA stuff, but keep blind, cover your eyes, don't look at it yet, because we got a lot of controversial picks coming up for that. So yeah, if you guys are excited for that, make sure to head over to our YouTube channel, Topical Rationalizing the Monkey Brain. Give us a subscribe on there. That'd be pretty cool. Giving us a like, that's always nice. So I know which ones you like the best, and I know who to bring back on. So yeah, do that. Go to iTunes, go to Overcast, I actually use Overcast. It's a really good podcasting player. Check out Overcast if you haven't. But yeah, that's about all I got. So we're gonna see you next time to wrap up everything that we haven't gotten to.
Goodbye, everybody. Sorry, I apologize for the sniffles and the sore voice, but I'll be better next time.
Yes. Adios.